There is a feeling, so common to our times, that it has almost become the background noise of our lives. It's the glow of a screen late at night, the endless scroll through curated lives that seems so much more complete than our own. It is the vibration of a notification in our pocket, a phantom limb that constantly demands our attention, pulling us away from the quiet reality of our own breath, our own heartbeat. We find ourselves standing in the middle of a storm, a hurricane of information, of expectations, of endless to-do lists, and the relentless pressure to perform, to optimize, to become. We are running on a treadmill that goes nowhere, powered by an invisible engine, the engine of more, leaving us breathless and wondering if this is all there is. A quiet exhaustion has settled deep within our bones, a sense that we are sprinting through our days, but somehow getting left behind. This feeling of being stuck, this low-grade, persistent anxiety, is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken. It is a symptom of our world, a world that has taught us to seek happiness everywhere but within. We have been handed a map that leads to a treasure chest outside of ourselves. Through the next achievement, the next purchase, the next promotion, the next relationship, we follow the map diligently. We chase the horizons it promises. Yet, with every destination we reach, the treasure seems to move further away. This creates a profound and painful disconnect, a subtle but constant sense of dissatisfaction, a feeling that no matter how much we accumulate or how much we accomplish, something essential is missing. We smile for the photos, we check the boxes, but in the silent moments, when the noise finally fades, a question rises from the depths, a question we are often too afraid to truly face. What if this feeling of unease, this suffering, is not the enemy? What if your anxiety, your stress, your feeling of being lost, is not a problem to be fixed, but a message to be heard? What if your pain is a teacher, a compassionate guide, trying to point you toward a different path? There is an ancient wisdom, a timeless science of the mind that has spent thousands of years exploring this very question. It does not offer a magic pill or a simple escape from the challenges of life. Instead, it offers a way to walk through them with grace, with clarity, and with a sense of profound inner freedom. This is not a path that requires blind faith or for you to become someone you are not. It is a path of looking inward, of becoming intimately familiar with the workings of your own mind and heart. It begins with the most important question you may ever ask yourself. What is your suffering trying to teach you? To begin a journey, one must first know where they stand. Before we can navigate to a place of clarity and peace, we must have the courage to look honestly at the landscape we currently inhabit. The first teaching offered by the Buddha, the foundation upon which all other wisdom rests, is a direct and unflinching look at this landscape. It is known as the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. In the ancient Pali language, the word used is dukkha, and our immediate translation of this word into suffering is perhaps the first obstacle we encounter, because it is both true and deeply incomplete. Our minds immediately conjure images of great tragedy, of profound loss, of acute physical or emotional pain. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and much more pervasive. It is woven into the very fabric of our ordinary, everyday existence. Imagine a beautiful, finely crafted cart. It moves along the road, but one of its wheels is just slightly off-center. It is not broken. It still turns. It still carries the cart forward. But with every rotation, there is a slight wobble, a subtle bump, an almost imperceptible friction. The ride is never perfectly smooth. The journey is marked by a constant, low-grade agitation. This is a closer understanding of dukkha. It is not just the crash of the cart, it is the persistent, underlying wobble of the wheel. It is the general, often unspoken sense that things are not quite right, that life is inherently unsatisfactory. It is the texture of imperfection. Dukkha is the discomfort of a shoe that is just a little too tight, not enough to cause a blister immediately, but enough to ensure you are always aware of its presence. It is the low-level static on a radio, obscuring the clarity of the music. It even touches our moments of greatest joy. We experience a moment of pure happiness, a beautiful sunset, a long-awaited success, a loving embrace. And in that very moment, a subtle thought can arise, a quiet fear. This will not last. The knowledge of its impermanence, the desire to cling to it, to make it stay forever, that too is dukkha. It is the suffering of change, the stress of holding on to that which, by its very nature, must fade. In our modern world, these subtle forms of dukkha have mutated and multiplied, amplified by the very technologies and cultural narratives designed to make us happy. Consider the constant, forward-leaning anxiety that defines so many of our lives. We live in a perpetual state of planning for a future that never quite arrives. Our minds are filled with a relentless stream of what-ifs. What if I fail this project? What if I lose my job? What if I don't meet my goals? What if I choose the wrong partner, the wrong career, the wrong path? We are living on a timeline that is always one step ahead of the present moment, a state of striving that denies us peace in the here and now. This is dukkha, and while one part of our mind is lost in the future, another is often anchored in the past, replaying events in an endless loop. We dwell on conversations, thinking of all the things we should have said. We carry the weight of old mistakes, cringing at memories, bathing in the waters of regret. This clinging to a past that cannot be changed is a heavy burden. This is dukkha. And then there is the present moment itself, which we are so often desperate to escape. We feel the pull of boredom, a sense of inner restlessness that sends our hand reaching for a phone, for a distraction, for anything to fill the void of simply being. We have become uncomfortable with stillness, with the unadorned reality of the now. We feel it is not enough. We feel that we are not enough. This constant pressure for self-improvement, the feeling that we are a problem to be solved, a project to be completed, that we must always be optimizing, biohacking, and upgrading ourselves. This too is a profound form of dukkha. It is the exhausting belief that we are not whole just as we are. To speak of this, to name it so directly, can feel pessimistic. Our culture often encourages us to look away, to practice relentless positivity, to put on a brave face and simply push through. But the Buddhist path suggests something radically different. It suggests that acknowledging dukkha is not an act of negativity, but an act of supreme courage and realism. It is the most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves. It is the moment a doctor, in order to heal a patient, must first diagnose the illness. To ignore the symptoms, to pretend they are not there, is not kindness, it is neglect. To turn on the light in a dark room is the first and most necessary step. We may not initially like what the light reveals, the clutter and the dust we have allowed to accumulate, but now, for the first time, we can see where we are. We are no longer stumbling blindly, bumping into furniture we didn't know was there. By acknowledging the reality of dukkha in our lives, we stop fighting a shadow. We stop wasting enormous energy pretending things are other than they are. We simply, gently, and bravely acknowledge the truth of our own experience. There is a powerful story that illustrates this realization. The story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a happy life until her young son fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so profound it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She carried his small body through her village, going from house to house, begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, she came across a wise man who saw her desperation and offered her a strange prescription. He told her, "I can make the medicine you seek, but first, you must bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a parent, a spouse, or a friend." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search. She went from house to house, her request always the same, and the response was always the same. "We have mustard seeds," the people would say, their voices soft with sympathy. "But in this house, a father has died. In this house, we lost a daughter. In this house, a husband has passed." She went to every home in the village, and then to the next, and the story never changed. The living were few, but the dead were many. As the sun began to set, the truth slowly dawned on her, not as a harsh intellectual concept, but as a deep, embodied understanding. Her grief, which had felt so singular, so isolating, was in fact the universal inheritance of all human beings. Her pain was not hers alone, it was the pain of the world. In that moment of profound realization, her frantic clinging to her own personal sorrow dissolved. She understood the first noble truth, not as a doctrine, but as a shared reality. She could finally lay her son's body to rest, her heart broken, but no longer alone. This is the first step on the path. It is not about wallowing in misery, but about seeing our condition with the clear, steady eyes of a scientist and the gentle, accepting heart of a friend. We look at the friction, the stress, the anxiety, and the dissatisfaction in our lives, and we stop calling it an enemy. We stop trying to numb it or run from it. Instead, we allow it to be there. We make it the object of our mindful attention. We say, this is the feeling of anxiety. This is what restlessness feels like in my body. This is regret. By transforming our discomfort from a tormentor into an object of observation, we fundamentally change our relationship to it. We take away its power. It is no longer a verdict on our life, but simply a condition, a starting point. And once we have fully acknowledged the condition, once we have looked the diagnosis square in the face, the next logical and hopeful question arises. If this is the truth of our unease, then where does it come from? What is its cause? This question, born from the courage of this first truth, is what leads us forward on the path to its solution. Having had the courage to look directly at the nature of our unease, to acknowledge the subtle and pervasive friction of dukkha in our lives, we are no longer in the dark. We have turned on the light and surveyed the room. The next step in this profound investigation is not to immediately start rearranging the furniture, but to ask a simple, powerful question. How did it get this way? If dukkha is the symptom, what is the underlying cause? The Buddha's answer to this is the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, known as samudaya. This truth unmasks the architect of our anxiety, revealing that our suffering is not random, nor is it inflicted upon us by an unkind world. It is generated from within, by a powerful force the Buddha identified with a single, potent word, tanha. Tanha is a Pali word that translates as thirst, craving, clinging, or desire, but it is a thirst of a particular kind. It is not the simple, healthy desire for food when we are hungry or for warmth when we are cold. Tanha is a deep, grasping, and insatiable thirst that is born from a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. It is the engine of our dissatisfaction. There is a famous Buddhist teaching about the two arrows. The first arrow is an unavoidable part of life. We get sick, we lose a job, someone speaks unkindly to us, we experience loss. These are the painful, objective events of a human existence. The first arrow hurts, but it is survivable. The real suffering, the prolonged and agonizing kind, comes from the second arrow. The second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves. It is our reaction to the first arrow. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. Why me? This is unfair. This shouldn't be happening. I can't stand this. It is the anger, the resentment, the self-pity, the fear. This second arrow is tanha in action. It is the craving for reality to be different than it is, and the intense suffering that arises from that futile demand. Our task, then, is not to build a shield that can stop all of life's first arrows, for such a shield does not exist. Our task is to learn not to shoot the second arrow. To understand how to do this, we must first recognize the three distinct faces of this powerful thirst, for it manifests in our lives in several ways. The first and most obvious is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for experiences that are pleasing to our five senses. The desire for delicious food, for beautiful sights, for pleasant sounds, for comforting textures, for intoxicating smells. In our modern world, kama tanha has been placed upon a throne and worshipped as a god. It is the engine of consumerism, the endless cycle of wanting the next phone, the next car, the next vacation, the next fashion. It is the logic of the binge watch, the doom scroll, the compulsive checking of social media feeds for that small hit of dopamine. We are conditioned to believe that fulfillment is just one more purchase, one more experience, one more sensory delight away. But the nature of sense pleasure is that it is fleeting. The delicious taste fades, the thrill of the new object wears off, the beautiful sound ends, and as soon as it does, the thirst returns, often stronger than before, demanding its next fix. This endless chase, this reliance on external stimuli for our happiness, is a primary source of our restlessness. The second form of thirst is more subtle and perhaps even more powerful. It is called bhavatanha, the craving to become. This is not just the desire to have something, but the desire to be something. It is the deep-seated craving for existence, for identity, for a solid and permanent sense of self. It is the ego's grand project. We crave to be seen as successful, intelligent, attractive, or spiritual. We cling to our roles as a parent, a professional, an artist, a victim. We build our identity like a fortress, made of our beliefs, our accomplishments, our life story, and we live in constant, low-grade fear of that fortress being threatened. Bhavatanha is the driving force behind ambition, the relentless desire to leave a mark, to amount to something, to secure our legacy. It is the fear of being ordinary, of being a nobody. We think that if we can just become this idealized version of ourselves, then we will finally be safe. Then we will finally be happy. But because the self is not a fixed, solid thing, but a fluid process, this project of self-construction is doomed to be a source of constant anxiety. We must forever guard the walls of our identity, polish our image, and defend our story, which is an utterly exhausting way to live. The third form of this thirst is the mirror image of the second. It is vibhava tanha, the craving for non-existence or annihilation. This is the energy of aversion, the intense desire for things to go away. It is the craving to not be in pain, to not be anxious, to not be bored, to not be in this difficult situation. When we feel a wave of anxiety, Vibhavatanya is the voice that screams, "I want this to stop. I can't handle this feeling." It is the powerful pushback against reality, the violent resistance to our own present moment experience. We try to annihilate our discomfort through distraction, through substances, through anger, or through numbness. In its most extreme form, it can manifest as suicidal ideation, the ultimate desire to annihilate a self that is perceived as the source of unbearable pain. But on a daily basis, it is the constant, draining battle we wage against the unpleasant aspects of our life and our own mind. It is the futile attempt to create a life free of all discomfort, a battle that can never be won and which only creates more tension and suffering. This constant pushing away is just as much a form of clinging as the pulling towards of the other two thirsts. There is a simple yet profound story that perfectly illustrates how tanha, this clinging thirst, is the true source of our imprisonment. In some parts of Asia, hunters have a clever way of trapping monkeys. They take a hollowed-out coconut or gourd and drill a hole in it just large enough for a monkey to slide its open hand through. Inside the gourd, they place some delicious nuts or rice. The gourd is then tied securely to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the bait, and slides its hand through the small opening. It grasps the nuts in its fist, delighted by its prize. But now, when it tries to withdraw its hand, it cannot. The hole is too small for its clenched fist to pass through. The monkey pulls and screeches, growing more and more frantic, but it cannot get free. It never occurs to the monkey that the trap is not the gourd. The trap is its own fist. It is its own craving. The hunter can simply walk up and capture the monkey, which is held there not by any external force, but by its own refusal to let go of the prize. Its freedom is available in any given moment. All it has to do is open its hand, release the nuts, and it would be free to scamper away. We are, in so many ways, like that monkey. We are trapped, not by the circumstances of our lives, but by our own clenched fist, our own desperate clinging to pleasures, to identities, and our aversion to pain. We think that our happiness depends on getting the nuts, on holding on to them. We don't realize that the very act of grasping is what causes our suffering. We are imprisoned by our own tanha. The second noble truth, then, is not a statement of blame. It is a liberating diagnosis. It tells us that the architect of our prison is our own mind, our own habits of craving and clinging. This is not bad news. It is the best news imaginable, because if we built the prison, it means we also hold the key. If the cause of our suffering is internal, generated by our own habits of mind, then the solution must also be internal. We do not need the world to change. We do not need to find a way to get the nuts out of the gourd. We only need to learn, gently and patiently, how to open our hand. This realization that a different way is possible is the doorway to the next truth, the truth that a cessation of this thirst is achievable. Having walked through the sobering diagnosis of our condition, the truth of dukkha, and having unmasked its primary architect, the insatiable thirst of tanha, we might find ourselves at a critical juncture. It can feel disheartening to see so clearly how our own minds, with their habits of clinging and aversion, weave the very fabric of our discontent. We see the monkey with its fist stuck in the gourd, and we recognize ourselves. This recognition could lead to despair, a sense that we are hopelessly caught. But it is precisely here, at this point of stark clarity, that the Buddhist path offers its most pivotal and luminous teaching. It offers a promise that is radical, profound, and drenched in hope. This is the third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, known as Nirodha. It is the simple, direct, and life-altering statement that the thirst of tanha can be quenched, the fires of suffering can be extinguished, and a state of unshakable peace is entirely possible. The destination of this path, the experience of Nirodha, is often known by another name, nirvana, and this word, perhaps more than any other in Buddhist philosophy, is shrouded in misconception. We tend to imagine nirvana as a kind of faraway, ethereal heaven, a paradise one goes to after death, filled with clouds and celestial music. Or we might imagine it as a state of complete annihilation, a blissful void where all personality and feeling are erased. The third noble truth asks us to set aside these images. Nirvana is not a place you go to. It is a reality you awaken to. It is not in the future. Its potential exists within this very moment, within this very mind. The word nirvana literally means to extinguish or to blow out. This immediately begs the question, what is it that is extinguished? It is not the soul, not the self, not the vibrant spark of life. What is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all our suffering: the fire of greed and craving, the fire of hatred and aversion, and the fire of ignorance and delusion. These are the very flames of tanha. Imagine a flame burning on a wick, fed by a constant supply of oil. The flame is agitated, flickering, hot, and consuming. This is the mind caught in the grip of tanha. Nirodha is not the destruction of the lamp. It is simply the process of no longer adding oil. When the fuel of craving is removed, the flame gently subsides. And what is left when the flame goes out? Not a black hole of nothingness, but coolness, stillness, and peace. The agitation is gone. The consuming heat is gone. What remains is the mind in its natural, luminous state of clarity. This cessation of craving does not lead to a life that is empty, colorless, or devoid of feeling. It leads to a life that is infinitely richer and more vivid, when our experience is no longer filtered through the constant, distorting lens of, I want this, I don't want this, and I need this to be different. We begin to encounter the world directly. For the first time, our minds, when agitated by the winds of tanha, are like the surface of a lake, whipped into a frenzy by a storm. The water is murky, turbulent, and its surface is so broken that it cannot reflect anything with clarity. It cannot show you the true color of the sky, the true shape of the trees on the shore, or the steady light of the moon. It reflects only its own chaos. This is how most of us experience our lives, through the turbulent water of our own reactive minds. But when the winds of craving begin to subside, the lake surface grows still, the sediment settles, the water becomes crystal clear, and now the lake can perfectly reflect the world around it, just as it is. It reflects the brilliant blue of the sky without trying to possess it. It reflects the dark clouds without trying to push them away. It reflects the moon with such fidelity that you can see every crater. The lake does not become the sky or the moon. It simply holds the image of them in a state of perfect, receptive stillness. A mind that has realized Nirodha is like this still lake. It does not deny the world its beauty or its pain, its joys or its sorrows. It experiences them all, but with a profound equanimity and clarity that was previously impossible. You can finally taste the tea you are drinking, without being lost in thoughts of what you have to do next. You can truly listen to another person, without formulating your own response while they speak. Life ceases to be a problem, to be solved, and becomes a reality to be experienced. This points to the most empowering aspect of the third noble truth. Freedom is an inside job. We are culturally conditioned to operate on an external to internal model of happiness. We believe, I will be happy when I get the promotion. I will be at peace when I find the right partner. I will be content when I can afford the perfect house. We make our inner state a hostage to external circumstances, many of which are completely beyond our control. We spend our lives constantly trying to arrange the world outside of us in a way that will finally stop disturbing us. The third noble truth radically inverts this entire paradigm. It declares that genuine, lasting peace, a peace that cannot be shaken by the ups and downs of life, is found by changing our inner world, not the outer one. The goal is not to eliminate all the traffic on the road of life. The goal is to cultivate a state of mind that is not disturbed by the traffic. Imagine being stuck in a traffic jam. The mind, fueled by tana, by craving and aversion, becomes a cauldron of suffering. This is horrible. I'm going to be late. Why are these people driving so slowly? My life is being wasted. The body tenses, the blood pressure rises, the mind spins in a loop of anger and frustration. The external situation is simply a line of cars. The internal experience is a personal hell. Now, imagine a mind that has tasted nirodha in that same traffic jam. It acknowledges the reality of the situation. I am in traffic. I am not moving. There is no resistance, no second arrow. Because it is not fighting reality, the mind remains calm. It can notice the color of the sky, the music on the radio, the sensation of breath in the body. The external situation is identical, but the internal experience is one of peace. Nothing outside has changed, but everything is different. This is the freedom that nirodha promises. It is the discovery of a sanctuary of peace within you that no worldly event can ever truly touch. The third noble truth, therefore, is the great pivot of the Buddhist path. It is the turning point from diagnosis to prognosis. It is the doctor, after explaining the illness and its cause, looking the patient in the eye and saying with gentle confidence, "There is a cure. You can be well." It asserts that the state of the monkey with its fist in the gourd is not a permanent sentence. We can, in fact, learn to open our hand. This knowledge is not meant to be a mere philosophical comfort. It is meant to be a catalyst, an inspiration. It changes the entire emotional tone of the spiritual journey. We are no longer engaged in a desperate, grim battle against suffering. We are now on a hopeful, optimistic, and eminently practical path toward a tangible and achievable goal, the end of suffering. The existence of nirodha proves that our deepest nature is not flawed, broken, or sinful. Our deepest nature is this still, clear lake. The turbulence is an acquired habit. The peace is our birthright. Knowing that such a state of inner freedom and profound stillness is possible, the next question arises with an undeniable sense of urgency and purpose. If there is a destination of peace, and we know what causes us to stray from it, then what, precisely, is the map that will guide us there? This sets the stage for the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths, the path itself. Having followed the diagnosis from the symptom of our unease to its root cause, and having been given the profound assurance that a cure is possible, we arrive at the final, most practical stage of this journey of understanding. The first three noble truths are the diagnosis, the etiology, and the prognosis. The fourth noble truth is the prescription. It is the active treatment plan. After the physician has explained the nature of our ailment and assured us that we can be well, he now hands us the detailed, step-by-step regimen that will lead us to health. This is the truth of the path, known in Pali as Magga. It is the Buddha's blueprint for a balanced life, a complete and integrated guide for walking the road from suffering to peace. This blueprint is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. When we hear the word path and see a list of 8 steps, our modern minds tend to think of a linear sequence, like a ladder to be climbed one rung at a time. We might assume we must perfect step 1 before moving to step 2, and so on. But this is not at all how the path is to be understood. It is not a straight line, but a beautiful and intricate braid. It is not a ladder, but a wheel with 8 spokes. Each factor on the path is interconnected with all the others, each one supporting and deepening the rest. A wheel cannot function with only one spoke, nor can it function if the spokes are weak or uneven. The strength and integrity of the wheel depend on all 8 spokes working in harmony to support the hub and the rim. In the same way, progress on this spiritual journey requires the simultaneous cultivation of all 8 aspects of our lives. These 8 factors are right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Together, they form a holistic design for living, a comprehensive framework that touches every part of our human experience. To make this elegant system easier to grasp, these 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential pillars of training. The first is sila, which can be translated as ethical conduct. This is the foundation of the entire path. It is concerned with how we behave in the world, how we interact with others, and how we manage our outward actions. Sila is the commitment to live in a way that is skillful, wholesome, and, most importantly, harmless. It comprises 3 of the 8 path factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It is the practice of purifying our verbal and physical actions, ensuring they do not cause harm to ourselves or to any other living being. It is like preparing the soil before planting a garden. If the ground is filled with rocks, thorns, and poison, no matter how precious the seeds we sow, they will not be able to grow. Sila is the act of clearing the ground, removing the obstacles, and creating a fertile, safe, and ethical container for our inner work to flourish. The second pillar of the path is samadhi, which refers to mental discipline or concentration. Once we have established an outer environment of harmlessness through ethical conduct, we turn our attention inward to the training of the mind itself. This is where we learn to work directly with the monkey mind, that restless, scattered, and often chaotic stream of consciousness that so often dictates our lives. Samadhi is the practice of developing a mind that is calm, focused, stable, and unified. It is the art of gathering our scattered mental energy and bringing it to a point of stillness and strength. This pillar is composed of 3 path factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Through these practices, we learn to gently let go of unwholesome mental states and actively cultivate wholesome ones. We learn to anchor our awareness in the present moment, and we develop the capacity for deep, sustained focus. If sila is preparing the soil, samadhi is the act of planting the seeds of awareness and diligently watering them, protecting them from the weeds of distraction and the droughts of forgetfulness. The third and final pillar is panna, or wisdom. This is the ultimate fruit of the path, the reason for the journey itself. Panna is not mere intellectual knowledge, the kind you can get from reading books or listening to talks. It is a deep, penetrating, and experiential insight into the true nature of reality. It is seeing things as they are. This profound wisdom arises naturally from a mind that has been purified by ethical conduct, sila, and stabilized by mental discipline, samadhi. A calm and clear mind is the only instrument capable of seeing through the veils of illusion that cause our suffering. This pillar of wisdom consists of the first two path factors, right view and right intention. Right view is the laban, the compass that guides the entire journey, while right intention is the rudder that steers our heart and mind in the direction of wisdom and compassion. So, while wisdom is the fruit of the path, it is also present from the very beginning, guiding our every step. The beautiful flower of wisdom can only bloom in a garden that is well prepared and diligently cultivated. The entire spirit of this eightfold path is captured in the principle of the middle way. Before his own enlightenment, the Buddha explored the two extremes of life that were common for spiritual seekers of his time. First, as a prince, he lived a life of extreme sensual pleasure and indulgence, surrounded by every luxury imaginable. He found this path to be shallow, unsatisfying, and ultimately leading to more craving. Then, as an ascetic, he practiced extreme self-mortification, fasting until he was skeletal, holding his breath, and subjecting his body to excruciating pain. He found that this path only weakened the body and mind, making clarity impossible. He rejected both extremes, realizing that the path to liberation lay in a wise and balanced middle. This discovery is beautifully illustrated in the story of a monk named Sona. Sona had been a wealthy musician before joining the Buddha, and he was practicing with such fierce, self-punishing intensity that his feet were cracked and bleeding from endless walking meditation. He was exhausted and on the verge of giving up. The Buddha, knowing Sona's background, went to him and asked, "Sona, when you were a layman, were you not skilled at playing the lute?" "Yes, Lord," Sona replied. The Buddha then asked, "And what happened when the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly?" "They would snap, Lord," he said. "And what happened when the strings were too slack?" "They would produce no sound, Lord." The Buddha continued, "But when the strings were not too tight and not too slack, but tuned to a perfect, even pitch, was your lute melodious and pleasing to play?" "Yes, Lord, it was." The Buddha then concluded, "In the very same way, Sona, energy that is stretched too tight leads to restlessness and agitation, and energy that is too slack leads to laziness and lethargy. Therefore, you should cultivate a balance, a harmony in your effort, just like tuning the strings of your lute." This is the essence of the fourth noble truth. The Noble Eightfold Path is not a path of extremism. It is a path of balance, intelligence, and grace. It is not a doctrine you must believe, but a set of practices you must do. It is a how-to guide for life itself, addressing our relationship with the world, our inner landscape, and our deepest understanding. It is the ultimate expression of the Buddha's compassion. He did not simply point out that we were ill, nor did he just identify the cause. He walked the path himself, and then he drew us a detailed, reliable, and profoundly effective map so that we too could make the journey from the shore of suffering to the shore of unshakable peace. With this blueprint for a balanced life now laid out before us, we are ready to take our first conscious step upon it. We will begin our detailed exploration, where all true understanding must begin, with the foundation of wisdom itself, the very lens through which we learn to see the world anew. Right view. We stand now at the head of the path, the great river that flows from the land of suffering to the ocean of peace. The blueprint is in our hands, and the very first step on this map, the foundational element that informs every other, is called right view. In the Pali language, it is samaditthi. This is perhaps the most crucial factor on the entire path, for it is the compass that guides our journey. Without a clear and accurate view of the terrain, without a reliable sense of direction, all our energy and effort might be wasted, leading us deeper into the wilderness rather than out of it. Right view is not about being correct in an argumentative sense, nor is it about adopting a rigid set of beliefs. It is about seeing. It is about developing a perspective that is in harmony with reality, a way of looking at ourselves and the world that cuts through the dense fog of our confusion, our biases, and our wishful thinking. It is the first component of the pillar of wisdom for a simple reason. Before you can act wisely, you must first learn to see clearly. At its most fundamental level, right view is the clear and experiential understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It is one thing to hear these truths as a philosophical concept. It is another thing entirely to adopt them as the primary lens through which you interpret your life. To hold right view is to see for oneself the reality of dukkha, not just in great tragedies, but in the subtle dissatisfaction of a Tuesday afternoon. It is to recognize the constant, low-grade friction in our lives without turning away. It is to see, in our own experience, how the force of tanha, our clinging and craving, is the direct architect of this friction. We watch our own mind grasp for pleasure and push away pain, and we see the stress this battle creates. This is no longer a theory. It becomes a lived observation. Furthermore, right view is the confident understanding of nirodha, the recognition that a peace beyond this friction is possible, that the mind does not have to be a slave to its own cravings. And finally, it is the acceptance of magga, the Eightfold Path, as the practical and effective means to realize this peace. To hold the Four Noble Truths as your working model for reality is the bedrock of right view. It provides the essential context for everything else that follows. From this foundation, right view expands to encompass a deeper insight into the very nature of existence. This is the understanding of what are known as the three marks of existence, the three universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. The first of these is anicca, or impermanence. Right view is the clear seeing that everything is in a state of constant flux. Nothing is static. Our bodies are changing with every breath. Our thoughts and feelings arise and pass away like clouds in the sky. Our relationships evolve, our possessions decay, cultures shift, mountains erode, and stars are born and die. The entire universe is a dynamic, flowing process. The untrained mind resists this truth. It tries to build permanent shelters on shifting ground, clinging to pleasant moments and trying to freeze them in time, pushing away unpleasant moments and pretending they will not come. This resistance to the natural flow of life is a primary source of our suffering. Right view is to relax into this flow, to see change not as a threat, but as the fundamental rhythm of life. The second mark of existence flows directly from the first. It is dukkha, the truth of unsatisfactoriness we have already met. Because all things are impermanent, any attempt to find lasting, ultimate happiness in them is bound to end in disappointment. This is not a pessimistic judgment on the world. It is a simple, logical observation. A beautiful piece of music brings us joy, but it ends. A wonderful meal is satisfying, but the satisfaction fades. A loving relationship brings immense happiness, but it is subject to change, illness, and separation. Right view is to see this reality without despair, to appreciate the beauty of impermanent things without placing the impossible burden of our ultimate happiness upon them. It is to understand that the wobble in the wheel is inherent to the wheel itself, and to stop demanding that it provide a perfectly smooth ride. The third mark of existence is the most profound and liberating, and also the most challenging to our ordinary way of thinking. It is anatta, or not self. From the moment we are born, we build up a powerful sense of a solid, separate, and continuous I at the center of our experience. We think I am this body. These are my thoughts. These are my feelings. I am the one who is walking this path. We spend enormous energy protecting, promoting, and gratifying this self. Right view is the penetrating insight that, upon close examination, no such fixed, independent entity can be found. What we call a self is, in fact, a dynamic and interdependent process, a temporary coming together of physical and mental components: body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. None of these parts, individually or collectively, constitute a permanent, unchanging soul or self. They are all impermanent, all flowing. To see this is not to annihilate the self, but to see through the illusion of its solidity. It is to realize that what we are is a process, not a thing. This insight is the key that unlocks the door of our deepest fears and insecurities. For if there is no solid self to defend, who is there to be threatened? There is a famous ancient story that perfectly illustrates the difference between a limited, wrong view and the comprehensive nature of right view. A king once brought a magnificent elephant into his courtyard and assembled a group of men who had been blind from birth. He asked each of them to touch the elephant and describe what it was. The first man reached out and touched the elephant's thick, sturdy leg. "Your Majesty," he declared, "an elephant is like a great pillar." The second man happened to touch the elephant's trunk. He felt it move and curl and announced, "No, an elephant is like a thick snake." The third man got a hold of one of the elephant's large, waving ears. "You are both wrong," he insisted. "An elephant is clearly like a large, rough fan." Another touched the smooth, sharp tusk and described it as a spear, while the man who felt the tail described it as a rope. Soon, the men were all shouting at each other, each one absolutely convinced that his own partial experience represented the whole truth, and that all the others were fools. Our ordinary, conditioned view of the world is like that of the blind men. We grasp one small piece of reality, our own limited experience, our own cherished opinions, and we mistake it for the complete picture. We then cling to our view and defend it, creating conflict, misunderstanding, and suffering. Right view is the wisdom that allows us to step back and see the whole elephant. It is the ability to hold our own perspective lightly, knowing that it is just one part of a much larger reality. In our day-to-day lives, right view translates into a very practical skill, the wisdom of discernment. It is the ability to distinguish between what is skillful and what is unskillful. Faced with a choice, the mind guided by right view does not simply ask, "What do I want?" or "What feels good right now?" Instead, it asks, "What will be the result of this action? Will this word, this thought, this choice lead toward greater peace, clarity, and freedom for myself and for others in the long run? Or will it plant the seed of future suffering for the sake of a fleeting pleasure?" It is the ability to see the eventual hangover in the first sip of an extra drink, to see the future complication in a small, seemingly harmless lie, to see the future stress in a purchase made on impulse. It is the compass that keeps our daily decisions, small and large, oriented toward our deepest aspiration for peace. Without this compass, all other efforts on the path can become misguided. Our meditation could become a subtle form of spiritual ambition, Our ethical conduct could become rigid and self-righteous. Our effort could be wasted on unimportant goals. Right view ensures that every step we take is in the right direction. It illuminates the path ahead. And as this clear seeing begins to permeate our consciousness, as the fog of our confusion begins to lift, a natural transformation occurs. The way we see the world inevitably shapes what we value and what we aspire to. A clear view of reality naturally gives rise to clear and wholesome motivations. This leads us directly to the second factor of the path, the rudder that guides our heart and mind according to the map provided by right view. This is the cultivation of right intention. If right view is the compass that shows us the true north of our spiritual journey, then right intention is the firm and gentle hand upon the ship's wheel, steering us in that direction. Once our eyes have begun to adjust to the light, once we start to see the landscape of reality with more clarity, the truth of our dissatisfaction and its cause, and the possibility of peace or choice presents itself. It is not enough to simply have the map. We must consciously decide to follow it. This conscious decision, this alignment of our inner motivation with our highest wisdom, is the essence of right intention, or Samma Sankappa. It is the second factor of the path and the beating heart of the pillar of wisdom. It shifts our focus from the passive act of seeing to the active process of cultivation. It asks not only, what do I see, but also, where do I point my heart? What quality of thought will I water and nourish in the silent, fertile garden of my mind? This practice is profoundly internal. It takes place in the quiet moments, before a word is ever spoken, before a muscle ever moves. It is the shaping of the very source code of our being, the setting of the rudder before the ship even leaves the harbor. Without right intention, even our most sincere efforts can go astray. Our meditation can become an ego-driven quest for special states. Our kindness can be a transaction designed to win approval. Right intention ensures that the why behind our actions is pure. It is the aspiration to move away from the tangled thicket of self-interest and toward the open clearing of wisdom and compassion. The Buddha spoke of three distinct facets of this wholesome intention, three directions in which we must learn to point our minds. The first of these is the intention of renunciation, or nekkhamma. This is a word that can immediately sound austere and forbidding to the Western ear. We might picture a gaunt ascetic who has turned his back on all the joys of the world. But this is a misunderstanding of its true spirit. The essence of renunciation is not about deprivation, but about liberation. It is not a grim rejection of life, but a joyful act of letting go. It is the intention to release our clinging, grasping attachment to things that are, by their very nature, fleeting and unable to provide lasting satisfaction. It is the wisdom to recognize that while a certain amount of pleasure and comfort are good, the frantic, addictive pursuit of them is a primary cause of our stress. Renunciation is the intention to loosen our grip. So what, exactly, are we intending to let go of? First, we cultivate the intention to let go of our obsessive clinging to sense pleasures. This does not mean we cannot enjoy a delicious meal, a beautiful piece of music, or the warmth of the sun on our skin. The path is a middle way, not one of punishment. The problem is not the enjoyment itself, but our addiction to it, our dependence on it for our sense of well-being. It is the difference between mindfully savoring the complex flavors of a single piece of dark chocolate versus mindlessly consuming an entire bar to numb a feeling of anxiety. The first is an enrichment of life. The second is a form of bondage. The intention of renunciation is the quiet decision to seek a more reliable and stable form of well-being than the fleeting highs of sensory input. It is the recognition that constantly feeding the beast of desire only makes it hungrier. By intending to let go, we are not losing pleasure. We are gaining freedom from the exhausting need to constantly chase after it. Furthermore, we cultivate the intention to renounce our attachment to outcomes. This is a profound practice for a modern world obsessed with success, achievement, and control. We can pour our heart and soul into a project at work. We can love our family with all our being. We can strive to be a good person. Right intention encourages us to engage with life fully and passionately, but to gently release our clenched fist attachment to the results. We do our best, and then we let go. Why? Because the outcomes are almost always outside of our complete control. We can write a brilliant book that no one reads. We can give a perfect presentation, but the client still says no. We can love someone deeply, and they may still leave. If our inner peace is contingent on a specific outcome, we are setting ourselves up for constant anxiety and disappointment. The intention of renunciation is to find our sense of worth and peace in the quality of our effort, in the integrity of our actions, rather than in the unpredictable applause of the world. This brings an incredible lightness and grace to everything we do. Finally, and perhaps most subtly, this is an intention to let go of the ego's ceaseless projects. We let go of the need to be right, the need to have the last word, the need to constantly defend our identity and our opinions. We loosen our grip on the story of me accomplishments, my wounds, my specialness. This is the letting go of bhavatana, the craving to be someone. It is the quiet understanding that this solid self we work so hard to construct and polish is an illusion. When we are less invested in defending this fragile fortress, we become more open, more curious, and less easily offended. The feeling that accompanies this kind of renunciation is not one of loss. It is a feeling of immense relief. It is the sensation of putting down a heavy, invisible backpack that you have been carrying for so long, you forgot you were even wearing it. It creates a vast, quiet space in the mind, a space where true peace can finally take root. The second face of right intention is the intention of loving kindness, or avyapada. This translates literally as non-ill will or goodwill, and it is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of anger, resentment, and hatred. Ill will is one of the most destructive forces in our inner world. It is, as the saying goes, like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. When we harbor resentment, we are the ones who suffer. We are the ones who lie awake at night, replaying hurtful conversations. We are the ones whose bodies are flooded with the stress hormones of anger. We are the ones who are kept chained to the past, unable to live freely in the present. The intention of loving kindness is the conscious decision to break these chains. It is the deliberate choice to cultivate a mind of warmth, friendliness, and goodwill toward all beings, starting with ourselves. It is a radical commitment to meet the world with an open heart, even when it is difficult. Cultivating this intention is a very practical, moment-to-moment practice. Imagine you are driving, and another car suddenly cuts you off. The habitual, untrained reaction is a surge of anger. The mind instantly generates a hostile intention. What a jerk. I hope he gets a ticket. This reaction feels justified, but it accomplishes nothing other than poisoning your own stream of consciousness. The practice of right intention is to catch that moment. You notice the surge of anger, and you make a different choice. You intentionally shift the thought. Perhaps you think, may you be safe. May you get where you are going without an accident. Perhaps you are rushing to the hospital, or are simply having a terrible day. Whether or not that is true is irrelevant. The purpose of this shift is to free yourself from the toxic effects of your own anger. You are changing the emotional channel of your own mind from one of agitation to one of peace. This practice extends to all areas of our lives. When we hear of a colleague's success, the habitual mind might flicker with envy. Right intention is the practice of consciously replacing that envy with sympathetic joy, the intention of goodwill. That is wonderful for them. May they be happy and successful. When we are faced with criticism, the habitual mind flares with defensiveness and ill will. Right intention is the practice of creating a space, a pause, and intending to listen with an open heart, intending to find whatever truth may be in the words, and wishing the other person well, even if we disagree. A crucial point here is that right intention is not about forcing a feeling. You do not have to feel loving toward the person who cuts you off in traffic. The practice is simply to set the intention of goodwill. You are planting a seed. The sincere and repeated planting of this seed will, over time, begin to change the very soil of your mind, and the feelings of genuine loving kindness will begin to blossom more naturally. The third phase of right intention is the intention of harmlessness, or avihimsa. This is the intention of compassion. If loving kindness is the wish for all beings to be happy, compassion is the heart's response when they are not. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, and the sincere aspiration to alleviate that suffering. It is the active desire for all beings, without exception, to be free from pain. The intention of harmlessness is the vow to not cause harm through our actions, our words, or even our thoughts. It is a profound commitment to move through the world with as much gentleness and care as possible. On the most obvious level, this means not causing physical harm to any living creature, but its scope is far wider. It means intending not to harm with our speech, to avoid gossip that damages reputations, to avoid harsh words that wound the heart, to avoid criticism that is designed to tear down rather than build up. It means examining our livelihood, intending to earn a living in a way that does not contribute to the suffering of others or the destruction of our planet. It even means intending not to harm with our thoughts, to refrain from taking pleasure in the misfortune of others, a subtle but corrosive mental habit. And just as with loving kindness, the practice of compassion must begin with ourselves. For many of us, the person we are most consistently cruel to is the one we see in the mirror. We harm ourselves with relentless self-criticism, with negative self-talk that we would never dream of directing at another person. We harm ourselves by holding on to guilt and shame long after an event has passed. The intention of harmlessness is a vow to stop this inner violence. It is the intention to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a beloved friend who was struggling. It is the recognition that we too are deserving of compassion, and that only when we can offer it to ourselves can we genuinely offer it to the world. There is a timeless story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that beautifully encapsulates the essence of right intention. An old man is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, and ego." He continued, "The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness one, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man simply replied, "The one you feed." Right intention is the conscious, moment-by-moment choice of which wolf to feed. Our minds, Our gardens, left untended, they will naturally be overgrown with the weeds of our conditioned, habitual thoughts, weeds of anxiety, ill will, and selfish desire. Right intention is the gentle but persistent work of a master gardener. It is the daily practice of recognizing the weeds as they sprout and refusing to water them. And it is the deliberate act of planting and nurturing the seeds of wholesome intention, seeds of letting go, of goodwill, and of compassion, and giving them the light and attention they need to grow strong and fill the garden with their beauty. This inner work of setting our intention is the most fundamental level of karma. The Buddha stated that karma, the law of cause and effect, is satana volition, or intention. It is the intention behind the deed that carries the greatest weight. A generous act performed with a selfish, hidden motive of gaining praise creates a very different result than a small act of kindness performed with a heart of pure, selfless goodwill. By purifying the very source code of our motivation, we are changing our destiny. We are taking the reins of our own evolution into our hands. And as this garden of the mind begins to be cleared of weeds and filled with flowers, its nature inevitably begins to express itself outwardly. The purity we cultivate in the silence of our own hearts cannot be contained. It naturally overflows, and the very first place this transformation becomes visible to the world is in the words we choose to speak. This leads us, with undeniable logic, to the next step upon the path, the beginning of ethical action in the world, the practice of right speech. As our inner world begins to shift, guided by a clearer view and a purer intention, the transformation cannot remain contained. Like a light kindled in a dark room, its rays inevitably begin to shine outward, touching everything around it. The very first place this inner light becomes visible is through our speech. Words are the bridge between our silent, private mind and the shared social world. They are the most common and immediate way we express our inner state. Therefore, the next step on the Noble Eightfold Path, and the first step into the pillar of ethical conduct, or sila, is the practice of right speech, samavaka. This is the art of using our words with conscious, compassionate, and wise intention. We must not underestimate the power we wield every time we speak. Words are not mere sounds, they are potent forces. With our words, we can build a person up or tear them down. We can create harmony or sow discord. We can communicate love or inflict deep and lasting wounds. A single sentence can start a war or inspire a revolution of peace. To practice right speech is to recognize this power and to take responsibility for it, ensuring that the bridge between our inner and outer worlds is one that heals rather than harms. The Buddha, with his characteristic clarity, broke this practice down into 4 key principles, 4 gates through which our speech must pass if it is to be considered right. The first principle is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this is a commitment to telling the truth. It is a vow not to lie, not to intentionally deceive another person for our own gain or convenience, but its meaning extends far beyond just avoiding overt falsehoods. It is also an invitation to look at the more subtle ways we are untruthful in our daily lives. It is the practice of not exaggerating a story to make ourselves seem more interesting or heroic. It is the discipline to not make promises we know we cannot keep. It is the courage to not engage in flattery that we do not mean. Even the seemingly harmless white lie, told to avoid a moment of discomfort, is seen as a breach of this principle. Why is this so important? Because every time we speak untruthfully, we create a fissure in our own integrity. We create a split between the reality we know and the reality we present. And this inner division is a source of deep anxiety and mental clutter. It erodes our own self-respect. If we cannot trust our own words, how can we expect others to? More profoundly, how can we trust our own mind to see reality clearly if we are constantly bending it? The positive counterpart to this is a deep commitment to truthfulness. This doesn't mean we must be brutally blunt or share every thought that comes into our head. It means that when we do choose to speak, our words are reliable. They are aligned with reality. Cultivating this quality leads to a mind that is unified, clear, and calm, and a presence that others instinctively trust. The second principle is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is speech that is used as a weapon to create conflict between people. Its most common and insidious form is gossip. We speak ill of someone who is not present. We share a rumor. We delight in a story of another's misfortune. It is crucial to look honestly at our motivation for doing this. Often, we gossip to feel a sense of superiority, to bond with one person at the expense of another, or to feel like we are an insider with special information. This kind of speech is a poison to any community, whether it is a family, a workplace, or a circle of friends. It sows seeds of suspicion, damages reputations, and breaks the bonds of trust. It creates an atmosphere of fear, where people wonder what is being said about them as soon as they leave the room. The practice of right speech is to become a force for harmony, not division. It is the intention to refrain from repeating negative stories about others. It is the choice to speak in a way that unites people, that encourages reconciliation, and that looks for the good in others. When we hear gossip, we can choose to gently change the subject or simply not engage. We make a quiet vow that our words will be used to build bridges, not to dig trenches between people. The third principle is to abstain from harsh or abusive speech. This includes any form of communication designed to inflict pain, yelling, insulting, belittling, using cruel sarcasm, or speaking with contempt. It is vital to understand that harsh speech almost never arises from a place of wisdom or strength. It arises from our own suffering. It is the cry of our own wounded ego, our own fear, our own anger, the second arrow in action. When we feel threatened or hurt, the untrained mind lashes out, using words as a shield and a sword. We try to discharge our own discomfort by inflicting it upon someone else. But this only deepens the wound, both in the other person and in ourselves. It escalates conflict and fills our own body with the poison of aggression. The practice of right speech is to cultivate its opposite. Speech that is gentle, kind, and affectionate. It is learning to communicate our needs, our boundaries, and even our disagreements with a tone of respect. It is learning to pause when we feel a surge of anger, to breathe, and to wait until we can speak from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. It is the difference between saying, "You are so lazy, and I feel worried when I see the dishes piling up. Could we work together to find a solution?" The first is an attack. The second is an invitation. The first creates a wall. The second opens a door. The fourth and final principle is to abstain from idle chatter. This is speech that is aimless, pointless, and devoid of purpose. It is talking for the sake of talking, filling the air with noise simply to avoid the silence. This may seem less serious than lying or yelling, but the Buddha included it because he understood that our mental energy is a precious and finite resource. Idle chatter dissipates this energy. It scatters the mind and prevents it from becoming focused and clear. In our digital age, this principle has become more relevant than ever. We are surrounded by a constant deluge of idle chatter, the endless scroll of trivial posts, the stream of meaningless comments, the hours spent consuming content that neither educates nor uplifts us. Right speech is the practice of valuing our words and our attention. It is the intention to speak when we have something meaningful to say, and to be silent when we do not. This leads to the powerful practice of noble silence. Noble silence is not an awkward or empty silence. It is a rich, alert, and receptive state. It is the practice of truly listening to another person and to ourselves. It is the wisdom of knowing that sometimes the most compassionate, intelligent, and healing response is to offer the gift of our silent, non-judgmental presence. There is a wonderful story from ancient Greece about the philosopher Socrates that serves as a perfect guide for this practice. One day, an acquaintance ran up to him and said, "Socrates, do you know what I just heard about one of your friends?" "Hold on a moment," Socrates replied. "Before you tell me, I'd like you to pass a little test. It's called the triple filter test." The man looked confused. "The first filter," Socrates continued, "is truth. Are you absolutely sure that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man shook his head. "No," he said. "I actually just heard about it myself." "All right," said Socrates. "So you don't really know if it's true or not. Now let's try the second filter, the filter of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me about my friend something good?" "No. On the contrary," the man started. "So," Socrates interrupted, "you want to tell me something bad about him, but you're not certain it's true. You may still pass the test though, because there's one filter left. The filter of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me about my friend going to be useful to me?" The man paused, then said, "No, not really." Socrates concluded, "If what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor even useful, why tell it to me at all?" This simple, elegant test is a powerful tool we can use in our own lives. Before we speak, before we post, before we forward that message, we can pause and ask ourselves, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary or useful? We may not always hit the mark perfectly, but the simple act of asking begins to transform our relationship with our own words. The practice of right speech is not about becoming silent, rigid, or boring. It is about becoming a conscious artist of communication. It is about understanding that our words have the power to shape reality and choosing to use that power to create more beauty, harmony, and healing in the world. As we purify the stream of our speech, we create a powerful momentum of integrity that naturally carries over into the larger canvas of our lives. The same clarity and compassion that guide our words begin to guide our hands, our feet, and our every physical act. This leads us directly to the next fold in the path, the practice of right action. As the river of our intention, clarified and purified, flows outward, it first transforms the landscape of our speech. Now, that same river gathers force, moving from word to deed, shaping the very way we move and act in the world. This is the practice of right action, or samakamanta, the second factor in the great pillar of ethical conduct. If right speech is the purification of our voice, right action is the purification of our body's engagement with life. It is the conscious and deliberate alignment of our physical actions with our deepest aspirations for peace and harmlessness. We are not simply minds floating in space. We are embodied beings. Our hands, our feet, our physical presence are the primary tools with which we interact with the world. Right action is the art of ensuring these tools become instruments of kindness, generosity, and respect, rather than agents of suffering. This is not a restrictive code of conduct designed to limit our freedom. On the contrary, it is a path to a deeper and more authentic freedom from the guilt, fear, and complexity that inevitably follow in the wake of harmful actions. It is about simplifying our lives by grounding them in a foundation of impeccable integrity. The Buddha outlined this practice through 3 fundamental principles, 3 areas of our physical life that require mindful attention. The first and most foundational of these is to abstain from the taking of life. On its most direct and essential level, this is a commitment not to intentionally kill another human being. It is the recognition of the sanctity of human life and a vow to protect it. But the spirit of this principle extends far beyond this. Traditionally, it encompasses all sentient beings. It is an encouragement to cultivate a heart that respects and feels kinship with all living creatures, from the largest mammal to the smallest insect. It is the intention to move through the world with a gentle awareness, minimizing the harm we cause. But we can expand this principle even further into a truly contemporary understanding. In an age where the web of life on our planet is threatened, abstaining from taking life can be understood as an active commitment to protect the ecosystem that sustains all of us. It is taking action to not poison the rivers, to not destroy the forests, to not pollute the air we all breathe. Our small, conscious actions reducing our consumption, making sustainable choices, advocating for the health of our planet, become a profound expression of this first principle. It is right action on a global scale. And we can even turn this lens inward. It is the practice of not killing our own spirit with cynicism and despair, and not killing the burgeoning hope or creativity in another person with dismissive or cruel behavior. It is, in its broadest sense, a vow to be a protector and nurturer of life in all its magnificent forms. The second principle of right action is to abstain from taking that which is not given. At its core, this means not stealing. It is a profound respect for the property and efforts of others. We recognize that the things people possess are often the result of their hard work, their time, and their energy. To take these things is to violate their efforts and to create an atmosphere of mistrust and insecurity. But like the first precept, the practice of not stealing has many subtle and modern applications. It includes respecting intellectual property and not pirating the creative work of artists and writers. In the workplace, it means giving our employer an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, not stealing time through laziness or inattention. It is the practice of not exploiting another person's generosity or taking more than our fair share of a shared resource. It is a commitment to honesty and transparency in all our financial dealings. The positive counterpart to abstaining from stealing is the active cultivation of generosity, or dana. It is the joy of giving, whether it is our time, our energy, our listening ear, or our material resources when appropriate. The practice of generosity is a powerful antidote to the poison of craving. When we give freely, we are training our minds to let go, to find happiness in contribution rather than accumulation. When we live with a spirit of generosity and a commitment to not taking what is not freely offered, our lives become beautifully simple. We have nothing to hide. We have no fear of being found out. Our conscience is clear, and a clear conscience is a soft pillow upon which the mind can rest in peace. The third principle of right action is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This precept is often misunderstood in the modern world, seen as an old-fashioned or puritanical rule. But its true purpose is not one of repression, but of profound respect. It is about ensuring that our sexual energy, a powerful and fundamental aspect of our human life, is expressed in ways that are rooted in kindness, honesty, and a deep regard for the well-being of ourselves and others. At its most basic level, it means refraining from actions that cause harm through sexuality. This includes adultery, which involves breaking a trust and a commitment made to another person. It includes any form of sexual exploitation or coercion, where one person's desires are placed above the safety and autonomy of another. The absolute foundation of this principle is mutual consent, given freely and enthusiastically, without any form of pressure. But we can explore its subtleties further. It is an invitation to examine our relationship with sexuality itself. Are we using it as a way to connect with another person in a meaningful way? Or are we using it merely as a tool for our own gratification, a way to alleviate boredom or loneliness, with little regard for the other person's heart? It encourages us to avoid consuming media, such as pornography, that is exploitative and commodifies human bodies. It is a commitment to speak about others with respect, and not in a way that reduces them to objects of desire. It is the practice of bringing our full awareness and our highest intentions into this intimate area of our lives, ensuring that our expression of sexuality aligns with our values of compassion and harmlessness. The power of a complete transformation from wrong action to right action is perhaps best illustrated by the historical story of the great Indian emperor, Ashoka, who ruled in the 3rd century BCE. In his youth, Ashoka was a fearsome and ambitious conqueror, known for his ruthlessness. He waged a brutal war to conquer the neighboring kingdom of Kalinga. The war was a success, but the cost was staggering. The battlefield was littered with hundreds of thousands of dead and wounded. Upon surveying the horrific aftermath of his own actions, the fields of corpses, the wailing of widows and orphans, Ashoka was not filled with pride, but with a profound and soul-shaking remorse. The immense suffering he had caused broke his heart open. This powerful experience led him to embrace the teachings of the Buddha. He completely renounced violence and embarked on a new kind of reign. He replaced his policy of conquest by the sword with a policy of conquest by Dharma, by righteousness. He inscribed edicts on pillars and rocks throughout his vast empire, not boasting of his victories, but promoting tolerance, compassion, medical care for people and animals, and public welfare. Ashoka's life is a testament to the human capacity for radical change. It demonstrates that no matter how harmful our past actions may have been, a moment of clear seeing and deep remorse can completely alter our course, transforming our life into a powerful force for good in the world. The practice of right action, then, is the practice of making our entire physical existence an expression of our spiritual path. It is about asking ourselves, is this action I am about to take likely to lead to more peace, harmony, and well-being for myself and for others? When we live this way, our lives become a sanctuary. We create a space of safety and trust around us. We are no longer haunted by the ghosts of our past misdeeds. This simplifies our life beyond measure and provides the stable, ethical ground upon which a peaceful mind can be built. As we weave the threads of right speech and right action together, we begin to see how deeply they influence the very structure of our days, particularly in the realm of our work. The way we spend our 40 or more hours a week is one of the most significant actions we take. This leads us to the next crucial fold of the path, which examines how we can make our professional life not a distraction from our spiritual practice, but an integral part of it. This is the practice of right livelihood. Having established a foundation of harmlessness in our speech and our physical actions, the path now invites us to examine the very structure of our daily lives, the activity that occupies more of our waking hours than any other: our work. For most of us, our livelihood is not just a way to pay the bills. It is the primary stage upon which our actions and interactions play out. The third and final factor in the pillar of ethical conduct, or sila, is therefore right livelihood, sama ajiva. This principle asserts that for our lives to be truly whole and integrated, the way we earn our living must be in harmony with our spiritual values. It asks us to ensure that the very means by which we sustain our existence does not simultaneously contribute to the suffering of others. It transforms our work from a mere economic necessity, and often a source of great stress, into a meaningful and integral part of our spiritual practice. The Buddha, in his teachings, was very practical on this point. He identified 5 specific types of livelihood that a lay follower should avoid because they are seen as inherently harmful and directly causing an increase of suffering in the world. The first is dealing in weapons. To manufacture or sell instruments whose sole purpose is to inflict violence and cause death is a direct violation of the principle of harmlessness. The second is dealing in living beings. In the Buddha's time, this referred primarily to the slave trade, but also included the raising and selling of animals for slaughter, treating sentient life as a mere commodity to be bought and sold. The third is dealing in meat, specifically the work of a butcher, which involves the direct act of killing and dismembering animals. The fourth is dealing in poisons, substances whose explicit purpose is to harm or to kill. And the fifth is dealing in intoxicants, such as alcohol or drugs, which lead to heedlessness, cloud the mind, and are often the root cause of further suffering for individuals and families. The common thread running through these 5 trades is their direct and undeniable role in causing physical harm or diminishing the potential for mindfulness and clarity in oneself and others. In our vastly more complex and interconnected global economy, applying these principles requires a deeper and more subtle inquiry. While few of us may be directly involved in selling weapons or poisons, the chains of cause and effect in our world are long and often hidden. The practice of right livelihood today is not just about avoiding these 5 specific trades, but about cultivating a deep and honest curiosity about the impact of our work. This is the practice of looking beyond our monthly paycheck and asking ourselves a series of profound questions. Does the company I work for engage in practices that harm the environment, polluting the air and water that we all depend on for life? This is a modern form of dealing in poison. Does my work in the financial sector involve investing in or providing loans to corporations that engage in destructive or exploitative practices? Does my job in marketing or advertising contribute to the creation of tana, the insatiable thirst, by making people feel inadequate and constantly in need of more things to be happy? Does my work in the tech industry involve designing products that are intentionally addictive, leading to the heedlessness and anxiety that the Buddha warned against? These are not easy questions, and the answers are rarely black and white. The goal of this inquiry is not to induce guilt or to demand that everyone immediately quit their job and find work at a monastery or a non-profit. The purpose is to bring the light of our awareness to this huge part of our lives. It is to engage in an honest self-assessment, to ask, on balance, does my work contribute more good or more harm to the world? Does it force me to compromise my deepest values? Does it create a painful split between the person I want to be and the person my job requires me to be? This honest reflection is the very heart of the practice of right livelihood in the 21st century. It may lead some to make a change in their career. For others, it may lead them to become a force for positive change within their existing company. advocating for more ethical and sustainable practices. For everyone, it is an invitation to bring our whole selves to our work, to no longer compartmentalize our spiritual life from our professional life. This leads to a crucial point. Right livelihood is not only about what we do, but just as importantly, about how we do it. The spirit and intention we bring to our labor can transform even a mundane job into a profound practice. Imagine two people working in a woodshop, both tasked with building a table. The first person works with a mind full of resentment. He hates his job, he feels underpaid, and he is thinking only of the weekend. His movements are rushed and careless. He treats the wood as an obstacle and his tools as a burden. His mind is agitated and his body is tense. The table he produces may be functional, but it is lifeless, bearing the energetic imprint of his negativity. For him, work is a source of suffering. The second person, however, has cultivated the spirit of right livelihood. He approaches the wood with respect, feeling its grain and appreciating its nature. He handles his tools with care and precision. His mind is not lost in daydreams of the future or resentments about the past. It is fully present with the task at hand. The act of sanding the wood, of joining the legs, of finishing the surface, becomes a form of moving meditation. His mind is calm, focused, and absorbed in his craft. The table he produces is not only strong and beautiful, but it seems to radiate the care and attention that went into its creation. For this person, work is not a burden. It is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, patience, and creativity. A janitor who cleans a hospital floor with the conscious intention of creating a safe and healing environment for the sick is practicing right livelihood more deeply than the CEO of a charity who is motivated by ego and a desire for public praise. With this, the great pillar of sila, of ethical conduct, is now complete. We have explored the purification of our speech, the purification of our physical actions, and the purification of the way we sustain ourselves in the world. When our words, our deeds, and our work are all in harmony with the principles of kindness, truthfulness, and harmlessness, we create a life of extraordinary integrity and simplicity. We are no longer at war with ourselves. We have nothing to hide, nothing to defend, nothing to feel guilty about. This creates a powerful foundation of self-respect and inner peace. The garden of our life has been cleared of the most troublesome weeds. The soil has been tilled and prepared. This stable, ethical grounding is the essential prerequisite for the deeper, more intensive work of training the mind itself. With our external life in order, we can now turn our full attention inward to the direct cultivation of the mind. This requires a new kind of energy, a skillful and persistent application of our will. This brings us to the next great pillar of the path, the pillar of mental discipline, or samadhi, and to its first dynamic factor, the very engine that drives us forward, the practice of right effort. Having constructed a life of external integrity through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we arrive at a new phase of the journey. The foundation of sila, or ethical conduct, is now firmly in place. The garden of our life has been cleared of the most damaging rocks and thorns. The ground is stable. This allows us to turn our full attention inward, to begin the delicate and transformative work of training the mind itself. This work is the pillar of samadhi, or mental discipline, and its engine, the very force that drives all inner progress, is the practice of right effort, or samavayama. Without effort, nothing changes. A cleared garden, left untended, will soon be overgrown with weeds again. A ship with an accurate map and a well-made rudder will go nowhere without the wind in its sails or the power of its engine. Right effort is this dynamic, propulsive energy. It is the conscious and sustained application of our will to the project of our own liberation. But we must immediately clarify what effort means in this context. In our culture, effort is often associated with tense, stressful, white-knuckled striving. It is the ambitious, competitive energy of no pain, no gain. Right effort is the very opposite of this. It is skillful, gentle, balanced, and even joyful. It is the middle way of energy, avoiding the pitfall of lazy complacency on one side and that of anxious, aggressive striving on the other. It is the art of persistent, intelligent cultivation. The Buddha, in his genius for practical instruction, broke this practice down into 4 distinct aspects, often called the 4 great efforts. This is a comprehensive blueprint for our mental hygiene, a guide for how to skillfully work with the contents of our own minds. The first is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the wisdom of proactive prevention. It is the role of the watchful gatekeeper standing at the doors of our senses. Through mindfulness, we begin to recognize that certain inputs, certain triggers in our environment, are likely to plant unwholesome seeds in our minds. For one person, endlessly scrolling through curated images on social media might reliably plant the seeds of envy and inadequacy. For another, listening to angry talk radio might plant the seeds of hatred and division. For another, watching violent movies might plant the seeds of aggression. The effort of prevention is the wisdom to recognize these patterns and to gently, skillfully guard the gates. It is choosing to put the phone down, to turn off the radio, to select our entertainment wisely. It is not a fearful retreat from the world, but an intelligent protection of our own inner peace. We choose not to walk down the path where we know the poisonous thorns grow. The second of the 4 great efforts is to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Inevitably, despite our best preventive efforts, the weeds will sprout. A memory will trigger a surge of anger. A comment will spark a flame of jealousy. We will feel the pull of strong craving or the heavy weight of despair. An unwholesome state has taken root in the mind. The wrong effort here is twofold. Either we try to violently suppress the feeling, pushing it down and pretending it isn't there, which only gives it more power in the shadows, or we completely indulge it, letting it take over and dictate our words and actions. Right effort is a skillful middle path. It is the courage to turn toward the unwholesome state and acknowledge its presence without judgment. There is anger. This is what anger feels like. We then investigate it with gentle curiosity. Where did it come from? What is feeding it? Then, we consciously apply an antidote. If the mind is consumed with anger toward a person, we deliberately cultivate thoughts of loving kindness, remembering their good qualities, or reflecting on their own suffering. If the mind is gripped by craving for something, we contemplate its impermanence, seeing that even if we get it, the pleasure will not last. This is the gentle but firm act of pulling the weed out from the root, rather than just cutting it off at the surface. The third great effort is the joyful task of arousing wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the proactive, creative side of the practice. We don't just sit back and wait for feelings of kindness, compassion, or gratitude to spontaneously appear. We actively plant their seeds. We set aside time to deliberately cultivate these positive qualities. This can take many forms. We might read texts that inspire us, listen to teachings that uplift our hearts, or spend time in nature to cultivate a sense of awe and connection. We can practice gratitude meditation, consciously bringing to mind all the blessings in our lives, large and small. We can perform small, intentional acts of kindness, like offering a genuine compliment or helping a stranger, which softens our own heart. We are actively choosing what to grow in our inner garden. We are making the conscious decision to introduce flowers, nourishing vegetables, and strong trees where there were once only weeds. Finally, the fourth effort is to maintain and nurture wholesome states that have already arisen. Through our practice, a moment of genuine peace might arise during meditation. A wave of selfless compassion might wash over us when we witness another's pain. A feeling of deep clarity might dawn. These moments are precious. The untrained mind often does one of two things. It either ignores the moment, letting it pass unnoticed, or it grasps at it with anxiety, thinking, "Oh, this feels so good. I hope it never ends." This very grasping introduces tension and paradoxically drives the wholesome state away. Right effort here is the skill of a tender gardener who has seen a new sprout push through the soil. We don't pull on it to make it grow faster. We cherish it. We protect it. We give it the gentle sunlight of our attention and the water of our continued practice. We notice the conditions that allowed it to arise. Perhaps it was a moment of quiet, an act of generosity, or a particular insight, and we seek to recreate those conditions. We learn to rest in the wholesome state, allowing it to permeate our being, strengthening the neural pathways of peace and wisdom in our brain. The path of right effort is not without its obstacles. The two primary challenges are like great weights that try to hold us down. The first is sloth and torpor, a state of mental heaviness, dullness, and laziness. It is the voice that says, "I'm too tired. I'll do it tomorrow. This is too difficult." It is a heavy blanket that smothers our motivation. The antidote is to arouse energy. We can reflect on the precious and fleeting nature of our human life, on the certainty of death and the uncertainty of its time, which can create a sense of wise urgency. We can get up and practice walking meditation to invigorate the body. We can cultivate interest and curiosity, approaching our practice like a fascinating adventure of self-discovery. The second obstacle is its opposite, restlessness and worry. This is the agitated monkey mind, constantly swinging from one thought to another, filled with planning, anxiety, and regret. The mind is too energized, but the energy is scattered and chaotic. The antidote here is to calm the mind, most often by bringing the full force of our attention to a single, steady object, like the physical sensation of the breath entering and leaving the body. It is learning to trust the process, to relax the striving, and to allow the mind to settle. This diligent, balanced effort is not a joyless chore. It is, in fact, the path to a higher and more reliable form of happiness. As we persist in this practice, we begin to taste the fruits of our labor. We notice that we are less reactive, less easily disturbed. We experience more frequent moments of inner quiet and clarity. This pleasure of blamelessness, the joy that comes from having a mind that is becoming free, is a powerful motivator. It is far more satisfying and sustainable than the fleeting pleasures of the senses. Our progress may seem slow, even imperceptible from day to day. This is where we can remember the power of gentle, persistent effort. A single drop of water falling on a granite rock seems to have no effect. But over years, over centuries, that steady, persistent dripping can wear a deep hole in the hardest stone. In the same way, our small, consistent, daily efforts, the moment of choosing kindness over anger, the 5 extra minutes of meditation, the conscious choice to let go of a resentment, accumulate over time. with immense transformative power, wearing away the seemingly solid, rock-like habits of our mind. Right effort, then, is the art and science of being the wise and compassionate gardener of our own heart. It is the active ingredient in our own liberation. But to be a skillful gardener, one needs more than just energy and a good plan. One needs to be able to see the garden with pristine clarity. We need to be able to distinguish a weed from a flower at the earliest possible stage. We need to know what is actually happening in our inner world, to know which of the 4 efforts to apply. To do this, we need a tool of unparalleled importance. We need a bright, steady, and non-judgmental awareness. This brings us to the very heart of the pillar of mental discipline, the celebrated and essential practice of right mindfulness. Having built the stable foundation of an ethical life and ignited the engine of right effort, we now arrive at the very heart of Buddhist meditation, the central practice that unlocks the door to inner freedom. This is the 7th factor of the path, right mindfulness, or samma sati. If right effort is the will to be a good gardener, right mindfulness is the clear, unwavering light by which the gardener works. Without this light, our efforts are blind. We cannot tell a weed from a flower. We cannot see where to water or what to cultivate. Right mindfulness is this light. It is the practice of paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. It is the capacity to know what is happening in our experience while it is happening. The Pali word sati carries the sense of to remember. It is the remembering to come back over and over again. It is the gentle, compassionate act of remembering to return our awareness to the here and now, the only place where life is actually lived. Before we explore what mindfulness is, we must first clear away the most common misconception about what it is not. Many of us come to meditation with the idea that the goal is to empty the mind, to stop our thoughts, to achieve a state of perfect, blissful blankness. This belief is the cause of immense frustration for countless aspiring meditators. They sit down and they find that their mind is a raging torrent of thoughts, plans, memories, and fantasies. They try to stop this torrent, they fight with it, and they quickly conclude, I can't do this. My mind is too busy. Right mindfulness proposes something far more gentle and far more revolutionary. The goal is not to stop the river of thoughts, but to change your relationship to it. The goal is to step out of the turbulent water, sit peacefully on the riverbank, and simply watch the thoughts float by as objects of observation. We see a planning thought arise. We see it stay for a moment, and we see it pass away. We see a memory arise, and we watch it go. We are no longer carried away by the current. We are the calm, spacious, and knowing witness of our own experience. Mindfulness is not about emptying the mind. It is about knowing the mind. This profound practice is traditionally cultivated through a systematic training known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is a comprehensive guide to exploring the entirety of our human experience, moment by moment. The first foundation, and the most common starting point for all meditation, is mindfulness of the body, or kayanupassana. Why the body? Because the body is always, undeniably, in the present moment. Our thoughts can be lost in the past or racing toward the future, but the physical sensations of our body are always happening right now. The body is our most reliable anchor to the present. The most common way to access this is through mindfulness of breathing. We don't try to control the breath or change it in any way. We simply rest our attention on the raw, physical sensations of its natural rhythm. We might feel the cool air entering the nostrils and the warm air leaving, We might feel the subtle rise and fall of the abdomen, or the expansion and contraction of the chest. Our only job is to feel this sensation, this living proof that we are here, right now. And what happens when we do this? Inevitably, within a few seconds, the mind will wander. A thought will arise. What should I have for dinner? A memory will pop up. A worry will surface. This is not a failure. This is the moment the real practice begins. The moment we notice that the mind has wandered is a moment of pure mindfulness. In that instant, we have woken up, and then the instruction is simple and profound. Without any scolding or self-criticism, we gently acknowledge where the mind has gone, and then we softly, kindly guide our attention back to the sensation of the breath. That is the entire practice, over and over again. We are not training the mind to never wander. We are training it in the gentle art of returning. Each time we guide our attention back, we are strengthening a mental muscle of stability and compassion. This practice can then be extended beyond the breath. We can become mindful of our body's posture. As you sit, can you feel the points of contact with the chair? As you stand, can you feel the soles of your feet on the floor? As you walk, can you feel the intricate, coordinated dance of movement? The simple act of walking can become a profound meditation, anchoring you to the earth with every single step. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or Vedananupasana. Here, the word feeling has a very specific meaning. It doesn't refer to complex emotions like love or anger, but to the immediate, raw, sensory tone of any experience. Every single moment of our lives can be categorized as having one of three feeling tones: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. When we taste something sweet, a pleasant feeling arises. When we hear a loud, jarring noise, an unpleasant feeling arises. When we are simply sitting and nothing much is happening, a neutral feeling arises. The untrained mind reacts to these feeling tones on autopilot. When a pleasant feeling arises, the mind's immediate reaction is craving, "I like this. I want more of it. I hope it doesn't stop." When an unpleasant feeling arises, the immediate reaction is aversion. "I don't like this. I want it to go away. This shouldn't be happening." And when a neutral feeling arises, the reaction is often boredom or a kind of dull ignorance. We check out and look for some other stimulus. This automatic chain of reaction, from feeling tone to craving or aversion, is the root cause of the second arrow of suffering. The practice of mindfulness, of feelings, is to intercept this chain. We train ourselves to simply notice the feeling tone as it arises, without launching into the habitual reaction. An itch arises on the arm. This is an unpleasant feeling. Instead of immediately scratching it, the reaction of aversion, we can bring our mindful attention to it. We can simply note, mentally, unpleasant or itching. We observe it with curiosity. What does it actually feel like? Is it hot? Is it tingling? Does it move? By observing it in this detached, scientific way, we create a space between the stimulus and our response, and in this space lies our freedom. We discover that we do not have to be a slave to every passing itch, every pleasant taste, or every annoying sound. We can simply experience them as they are and let them go. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, or Sitanupasana. Here, we turn the light of awareness inward to look at the overall state or quality of our consciousness in any given moment. We are not yet looking at the specific content of our thoughts, but at the general weather of the mind. Is the mind currently experiencing greed or desire? We simply note, a mind with greed. Is the mind experiencing anger or ill will? We note, a mind with anger. Is the mind scattered and distracted? We note, a scattered mind. Is it calm and focused? We note, a focused mind. The power of this practice is that it helps us to disidentify from our moods. Instead of being lost in anger and thinking, I am so angry, the perspective shifts to a more objective, spacious view. I see that the state of anger is present in the mind right now. Suddenly, you are not the anger. You are the awareness that is seeing the anger. This depersonalizes the mental state. It turns it from an all-powerful identity into a temporary, impersonal weather pattern that is passing through the vast sky of your awareness. You come to see, through direct experience, that no mood is permanent. Greed arises and passes. Anger arises and passes. Even calmness arises and passes. This insight robs our moods of their tyrannical power over us. The fourth and final foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or Dhammanupassana. This is the most comprehensive category, where we bring our awareness to the very content of our experience, viewed through the framework of the Buddha's teachings. For our purposes, we can focus on one crucial aspect of this foundation: mindfulness of thoughts. Just as we sat on the riverbank and watched our feelings float by, we now learn to do the same with our thoughts. We sit quietly and observe the stream of consciousness. A thought about work arises. We can mentally label it thinking, or more specifically, planning. We don't get involved in the plan. We don't judge the plan. We simply see it as a mental event, a thought, and watch as it eventually dissolves and is replaced by another. A memory of a past holiday may appear. We note, remembering. We don't get lost in the nostalgia. We just see it as a memory thought. A worrying thought about the future may arise. We can note, worrying. The simple act of labeling a thought as worrying frames it as an object of observation. It is no longer an objective fact about a terrifying future, but a mental event called worry that is happening right now. This practice reveals the impermanent, insubstantial, and often random nature of our thought process. We realize we don't have to believe everything we think. We can choose which thoughts to engage with and which to simply let pass by. This fourfold practice is not meant to be confined to a meditation cushion. Its true purpose is to be woven into the fabric of our daily lives. We can practice mindfulness of body and feelings while drinking a cup of tea, truly tasting its flavor and feeling its warmth. We can practice mindfulness of walking as we go to our car. We can practice mindfulness of our mental state while we are in a conversation with our partner, noticing if a defensive or angry mind has arisen. We can practice mindfulness of our thoughts while standing in line at the grocery store. Every moment becomes an opportunity to wake up. This is beautifully captured in the image of a person walking a tightrope across a deep chasm. For the tightrope walker, survival depends on absolute, unwavering, moment-to-moment attention. Their focus cannot be on the platform they left behind, the past, nor can it be on the destination they hope to reach, the future. Their entire being, their very life, must be concentrated in the feeling of the rope beneath their feet in this present step. One moment of inattention, one thought of fear or distraction, and they will fall. Our path to inner peace is exactly the same. Our stability and freedom are found only in the present moment, held with the bright, steady light of mindfulness. Right mindfulness, then, is both the anchor and the light of our practice. It is the anchor that moors us to the present moment, preventing us from being swept away by the currents of past regrets and future anxieties. And it is the light that illuminates the inner workings of our own minds, allowing us to apply the four great efforts with precision and skill. Once the mind has been anchored, once it has been illuminated by this steady awareness, we can then train it to achieve even deeper states of calm, stability, and unity. We can learn to gather all the scattered rays of our attention and focus them like a laser on a single point. This ability to unify the mind, the culmination of all our ethical and mental training, is the practice that lies next on the path. It is the final factor in the pillar of mental discipline, the practice of right concentration. We have now journeyed through the dynamic and active principles of the path's great pillar of mental discipline. With right effort, we ignited the engine of our practice, learning to skillfully and gently cultivate a wholesome inner world. With right mindfulness, we acquired the brilliant, steady light of awareness, illuminating the present moment and allowing us to see our own minds with unprecedented clarity. We now arrive at the culmination of this training, the final factor of the pillar of samadhi, and the beautiful fruit that grows from the soil of effort and mindfulness. This is the practice of right concentration, or samma samadhi. If mindfulness is the act of constantly and gently returning our attention to an object like the breath, concentration is the state that arises when the attention finally rests there, stable and unwavering. If mindfulness is the shepherd, guiding a scattered flock of thoughts back to the fold, concentration is the peace that descends when the entire flock is resting calmly together. It is the art of unifying the mind, of gathering all its scattered energies and bringing them to a point of serene and powerful focus. It is important to understand the intimate relationship between mindfulness and concentration. They are like the two wings of a bird. Both are essential for flight. Mindfulness has a wider, more open quality. It is aware of whatever arises in the present moment. Concentration is more focused. It is the ability to place the mind on a single object and keep it there. Mindfulness is the faculty that notices when the mind has strayed from its object of concentration and provides the gentle encouragement to bring it back. As we practice this over and over, our ability to stay on the object grows stronger, the periods of focused attention grow longer, and the moments of distraction become shorter and less frequent. Eventually, the mind settles into a state of sustained, one-pointed awareness. This is samadhi. It is not a state of tense, rigid control. In fact, it is a state of profound relaxation and ease. The inner battle has ceased, the mental chatter has subsided, and the mind can finally rest, collected and whole. We must also distinguish right concentration from the ordinary, everyday forms of concentration we all experience. A video gamer is deeply concentrated on the screen. A novelist is lost in the world of their story. A surgeon's focus is absolute during a complex procedure, but this ordinary concentration is often rooted in the very forces we are trying to overcome. It can be fueled by craving the desire to win, the desire to escape here by aversion the fear of failure. It can be a tense and narrow focus that excludes the rest of our experience. Right concentration, however, is something different. It is right because it is part of the integrated eightfold path. It is built upon a foundation of sila, of ethical conduct, so it is a concentration that is pure and harmless. It is developed in tandem with right mindfulness, so it is a concentration that is imbued with awareness and wisdom, not a state of zoned-out oblivion. Its purpose is not worldly gain or entertainment, but the ultimate goal of liberation from suffering. It is a wholesome, bright, and powerful state of mind, cultivated with conscious, spiritual intent. The power of a mind that has been unified through concentration is immense. The normal, untrained mind is like a standard light bulb. Its energy, its light, is scattered in every direction. A little light shines on a memory of yesterday. A little shines on a worry about tomorrow. A little on a sound down the street. A little on a bodily itch. Because its energy is so dissipated, it has very little power to illuminate anything with real clarity. A concentrated mind, on the other hand, is like a laser beam. All of that scattered, diffuse energy is gathered together, unified, and focused into a single, coherent, and powerful beam of light. This beam has the power to penetrate. It can cut through the superficial layers of our experience and illuminate the deepest truths of our existence. It can see through the illusions of permanence and self that are the root cause of our suffering. Another way to picture it is to imagine the mind as a well of water. The unconcentrated mind is like a shallow, wide well on a windy day. The water is constantly being stirred up. It is full of mud and sediment, and its surface is too choppy to reflect anything clearly. A concentrated mind is like a deep, narrow, and protected well. The wind cannot disturb it. The sediment has all settled to the bottom, leaving the water pristine, cool, and perfectly clear. This is the quality of a mind in a state of samadhi. It is tranquil, pure, and capable of reflecting reality with perfect, undistorted fidelity. As the practice of concentration deepens, it can give rise to a series of profound and blissful states of meditative absorption known as the jhanas. These are states of immense joy, peace, and equanimity that arise naturally as the primary obstacles to our inner peace. The 5 hindrances of sensual desire, ill will, sloth, and torpor, restlessness, and worry, and skeptical doubt are temporarily suppressed. To enter these states is to experience a form of happiness and contentment that is entirely independent of the external world. The body can feel weightless and filled with a pleasant energy. A powerful sense of joy and bliss can permeate one's entire being. The frantic, inner monologue of our thoughts comes to a complete standstill, replaced by a silent, radiant awareness. These are states of profound rest and rejuvenation for the mind, a sanctuary from the stresses of the world. But it is crucial to understand that the jhanas are not the final goal of the path. They are not an escape or a spiritual hiding place. They are, rather, a tool of unparalleled quality. A mind that has been bathed in the bliss and clarity of jhana becomes an exceptionally powerful instrument. It is like taking a fine blade and honing it on a whetstone until its edge is razor sharp. These states of deep concentration provide the stability and power necessary for the arising of the deepest wisdom. Right concentration, then, is the pinnacle of our mental training. It is the art of forging our consciousness into a tool of extraordinary capacity, calm, stable, unified, and powerful. With this practice, the pillar of samadhi, of mental discipline, is now complete. We have established a virtuous and ethical way of living through sila. We have then used that stable foundation to train the mind through the coordinated practices of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. We have built a stable observatory, and we have polished the lens of our telescope until it is flawless. The instrument is now ready. The question that remains is, what do we look at? We now turn this powerful, purified, and concentrated mind back toward our own experience. We use this laser beam of awareness to investigate the nature of our body, our feelings, and our thoughts with a clarity that was previously unimaginable. This brings our journey full circle, allowing us to penetrate the profound truths of the pillar of wisdom, or panna, with a force that shatters illusion. We are now equipped not just to understand the concepts of impermanence and not self on an intellectual level, but to see them directly for ourselves. We are ready to awaken. With the mind now honed to a point of unprecedented clarity and stability, like a perfectly polished lens in a powerful telescope, we are ready to turn this magnificent instrument toward reality itself. The journey through ethical conduct and mental discipline has prepared us for this moment, the blossoming of Panna, or liberating wisdom. We begin this final phase of the path by investigating the most fundamental, universal, and observable characteristic of all existence. It is the first door to freedom, a truth so profound that when it is seen with the full force of a concentrated mind, it shatters our most cherished illusions and opens our hearts to a peace beyond anything we could have imagined. This is the wisdom of impermanence, or anicca. It is the simple, radical, and undeniable truth that everything changes. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Everything that comes into being is destined to pass away. From the vastest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, all of existence is a dynamic, ceaseless, and magnificent flow. Our deepest and most persistent suffering arises from a single, tragic mistake. We build our lives as if this were not true. We fight a constant, exhausting, and unwinnable war against the fundamental nature of reality. The wisdom of anicca is the invitation to lay down our arms and find peace, not by resisting the flow, but by learning to move gracefully with it. Our first and most patient teacher of impermanence is the natural world around us. It proclaims the truth of anicca in every moment, in every cycle. Contemplate the arc of a single day. The soft, hopeful light of dawn silently spills over the horizon, a unique and unrepeatable event. It blossoms into the full strength of midday, and then, just as surely, it begins its gentle descent into the long shadows of evening, finally dissolving into the deep darkness of night. Each phase is beautiful, each is necessary, and each gives way to the next without resistance. We do not mourn the passing of the morning, for we understand it is part of a larger, harmonious cycle. Consider the seasons. Spring erupts with the tender green of new life and the vibrant explosion of blossoms, but it does not last. It gracefully makes way for the deep, lush growth of summer. Summer's heat, in turn, surrenders to the crisp air and brilliant colors of autumn, a beautiful celebration of decay. And autumn releases its grip, allowing for the deep, quiet slumber of winter. The entire planet breathes in this rhythm of arising and passing away. The forest does not cling to its summer leaves, nor does the field cling to its winter snow. It understands the wisdom of letting go. We can see it in the patient, relentless power of water. A river is not a thing, but a process. The water that flows past us now is not the same water that flowed a moment ago. The great Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." The river is a perfect symbol of anicca. Even the things we perceive as most solid and eternal are caught in this dance. The majestic mountains that seem to be monuments to permanence are, over eons, being pushed up by tectonic forces and simultaneously worn down by wind and rain. The stars we gaze upon in the night sky are not eternal diamonds, but colossal thermonuclear furnaces, each with a finite lifespan, being born and dying in a timescale that dwarfs our own. The entire cosmos, from a single dewdrop to a supercluster of galaxies, is a testament to this universal law of change. Having seen this truth in the world around us, we now bring the lens of contemplation closer to home, to the most intimate and personal territory we know, our own body. We tend to think of our body as a solid, continuous thing that belongs to us, a familiar object that we carry through life. But the practice of mindfulness reveals that the body is not a noun, but a verb. It is not a static entity, but a bustling, ever-changing process. In this very moment, millions of your cells are dying, and millions of new ones are being born. The air you breathed in a moment ago is now a part of you, and the air you just exhaled has been released. Your heart is beating in a constant rhythm, blood is flowing, nerves are firing, food is digesting. The body is a vibrant, humming ecosystem of ceaseless activity. The body you inhabit today is not the same body you had 10 years ago. It is not even the same body you had yesterday. Every 7 to 10 years, it is said, nearly every atom in your body has been replaced. You are, quite literally, a new person. We can contemplate the undeniable arc of our own physical life. We began as a single cell, grew into the utter dependence of infancy, experienced the boundless energy of childhood, the hormonal storms of adolescence, the peak vitality of young adulthood, the gradual changes of middle age, and for those who live long, the increasing fragility and wisdom of old age. This progression is natural and universal, yet we resist it. We cling to our youth. We fear the signs of aging. We fight against the inevitable process of decay. This fight against the impermanence of our own body is a source of immense anxiety, fear, and suffering. When we can learn to see our body not as a fixed possession to be preserved, but as a precious, temporary vessel to be cared for and respected on its journey, we release ourselves from this struggle. We can even experience this truth in the micro moments of our felt sense. If you bring your awareness into your body right now, you can feel a universe of fleeting sensations, an area of warmth in your chest, a point of pressure where you are sitting, a subtle tingling in your hands. None of these sensations are static. They shimmer, they intensify, they soften, they move, they disappear. Your entire physical being is a shimmering field of sensation, arising and passing, moment by moment. It is never the same. Now we move to the most subtle, most powerful, and most liberating level of this contemplation, turning the lens of awareness onto the mind itself. For it is here, in our own consciousness, that our resistance to anicca is most fierce, and where the freedom of accepting it is most profound. We begin by observing our feelings. No feeling, no matter how intense, is permanent. Think of a moment of great joy, the thrill of achieving a goal, the warmth of a loving connection. In the moment, it feels all-encompassing. But where is it now? It has faded, leaving a pleasant memory, perhaps, but the peak intensity is gone. Think of a moment of intense pain, physical or emotional thria, sting of a harsh criticism, the grief of a loss. In the moment, it can feel like it will last forever, that we will never be happy again. But where is that intensity now? It has softened, it has changed, it has likely been replaced by 1,000 other feelings since. When we see this pattern directly in our own experience, we begin to change our relationship with our feelings. We stop desperately clinging to the pleasant ones, which frees us from the anxiety of their departure, and we stop frantically fighting the unpleasant ones, which allows us to meet them with a spacious and compassionate presence, knowing that they too shall pass. And then we look at our thoughts. The untrained mind identifies completely with its thoughts. We believe we are our thoughts. We take them as absolute truths, as commands to be obeyed. Mindfulness reveals something astonishing. The mind is like a waterfall, a ceaseless cascade of thoughts, images, and snippets of language. A thought about what to do this weekend appears from nowhere. It stays for a moment and then vanishes, replaced by a memory from childhood, which is then replaced by a line from a song, which is then replaced by a worry about a future event. It is an endless, streaming process. When we can sit back and simply watch this stream without getting swept away by it, we make a life-altering discovery. We are not our thoughts. We are the silent, loving awareness that is witnessing the thoughts. Thoughts are merely mental events. They are weather patterns passing through the vast, open sky of the mind. Sometimes the weather is stormy, with dark clouds of worry or anger. Sometimes it is bright and clear, but the sky is never damaged by the weather. The sky simply allows the weather to be what it is, knowing that it will change. Each thought, each feeling, is like an intricate and unique snowflake. It lands on the warm palm of our awareness, displays its fleeting beauty, and then melts away. Our suffering comes from trying to catch the snowflakes, to analyze them, to hoard them, to fight with them. The wisdom of anicca is to simply hold our hand open, appreciating the momentary grace of each one as it comes and goes. This deep, experiential seeing of impermanence is not a depressing or nihilistic philosophy. It is the foundation of all hope, all creativity, and all possibility for growth. It is the best news in the world. Because unskillful habits are impermanent, they can be changed. Because sadness and grief are impermanent, the heart can heal. Because ignorance is impermanent, it can be transformed into wisdom. If things were permanent, we would be hopelessly stuck in our patterns forever. Change is the very engine of liberation. When we finally stop fighting the current, we discover a new way of living. Life can be seen as a great ocean, and the changing circumstances of our lives gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow wear the waves on that ocean. The suffering mind stands on the shore, trying to command the waves, getting angry when the waves are big, and anxious when the water is calm, fearing the next storm. It is an exhausting and futile battle. The wise mind, the mind that understands anicca, learns to surf. It builds a strong vessel of ethical conduct and mental discipline, and it sails out to meet the waves. It learns to ride the crest of a wave of joy with exhilaration but without clinging. It learns to navigate the trough of a wave of sorrow with balance and courage, knowing it will rise again. It uses the very energy of the waves, the very energy of life's changes, to move forward with grace, skill, and even a sense of playfulness. This profound journey into the heart of impermanence, this shift from resisting reality to flowing with it, leads us to a final, unavoidable question. As we watch our body change moment by moment, as we see our feelings arise and pass away, as we witness the ceaseless stream of our thoughts, we are forced to ask, if all of this is changing, if everything I once identified with is in flux, then who or what is this I that I have always believed to be so solid, so continuous, and so real? What is the nature of this surfer on the waves of change? This penetrating question is the gateway to the next great insight of the path, the most liberating and radical teaching of all, the wisdom of not, self, or anatta. After journeying into the profound truth of universal change, of anicca, we are left standing before a question that cuts to the very core of our being. If we have seen that our body is in constant flux, that our feelings are like fleeting clouds, and that our thoughts are a ceaseless waterfall, then who is it that is experiencing all of this? Where is the permanent, unchanging I that we feel resides at the center of our universe. The search for this essential self is the next great investigation on the path of wisdom. And the discovery we make is the most radical, the most challenging, and ultimately the most liberating insight offered by the Buddha. This is the teaching of not self, or anatta. This teaching is not a declaration that you do not exist. You are clearly here, breathing, hearing these words. Anatta is not a philosophy of nihilism or annihilation. Rather, it is a profound clarification of how you exist. It states that upon close examination, we find that there is no solid, separate, continuous entity that we can identify as a self. What we call our self is not a static thing, but a dynamic and selfless process. We are not a noun, we are a verb. We are not a statue, we are a dance. And understanding this is the key that unlocks the final door to freedom. To understand this, Buddhist psychology invites us to deconstruct our own experience into its component parts. It suggests that what we call a person is a temporary coming together of 5 distinct processes, known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. These are the building blocks of our moment-to-moment reality. The first is the aggregate of form, or rupa. This is our physical body and the entire material world. Look at your body. Is this body truly you? We have already seen that it is impermanent, constantly changing. The cells that compose it today are not the same ones that composed it years ago. The hair you cut off and sweep from the floor, was that you? If your body were truly you, you should be able to command it to not get sick, to not grow old, to not feel pain. But we cannot. The body follows its own natural laws. We experience the body, we inhabit the body, but it is not a permanent, unchanging self. It is a process. The second aggregate is feeling, or vedana. This refers to the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones that arise from contact with the world. Are you your feelings? If you were, then you would be a different person from one moment to the next. You would be the joy you felt this morning, and then you would be the frustration you felt this afternoon. If you are your happiness, where do you go when sadness arises? We can see that feelings are like visitors. They come, they stay for a while, and then they leave. We are the house in which they visit, but we are not the visitors themselves. The third aggregate is perception, or sana. This is the mental faculty that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It is the part of the mind that says, blue, car, tree, sound of a bird. It organizes the raw data of our senses into coherent concepts. Is this faculty of perception you? This function operates almost like a piece of software, labeling the files of our experience. It is a useful and necessary tool, but a tool is not the one who wields it. Perception is a function of the mind, not an essential self. The fourth aggregate is the vast and complex category of mental formations, or sankhara. This includes all of our volitional activities, our thoughts, our opinions, our beliefs, our moods, our habits, our prejudices, our aspirations, our intentions. This is the category we most strongly identify with. We think, I am my thoughts, I am my beliefs. But as we have seen in the practice of mindfulness, thoughts are the most ephemeral of all things. They arise from causes and conditions, and they vanish in an instant. If you were your angry thought, you would cease to exist when the anger fades. If you were your political opinion, your very essence would change if you were presented with new information. These mental formations are processes, conditioned and fleeting. They are not a solid, reliable self. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the raw faculty of awareness, the knowing quality that is present when we see, hear, taste, touch, or think. This is the most subtle level. One might think, surely this awareness, this knowing, this must be me, this must be my soul. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness, too, is a conditioned process. It does not exist independently. It arises only when a sense organ and a sense object come together. There is eye consciousness, which arises when the eye meets a form. There is ear consciousness, which arises when the ear meets a sound. There is mind consciousness, which arises when the mind meets a thought. There is no single, monolithic consciousness floating around on its own. It is an interdependent process, arising and passing away with every moment of experience. So we have looked at the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts, and the raw awareness, and we cannot find a solid, independent self in any of them. This can feel confusing, and it is a point that has been debated for centuries. There is a famous story that illustrates this with beautiful clarity from an ancient text called The Questions of King Milinda. The Greek king Milinda, a great philosophical debater, approached the Buddhist sage Nagasena. He asked, "Venerable sir, what is your name?" The sage replied, "I am known as Nagasena, your majesty, but this is only a designation, a convenient name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king was astounded. "If there is no person," he challenged, "then who is it that wears these robes? Who is it that eats and sleeps? If I were to have you killed, there would be no murder." He then pointed to his royal chariot. "Is this chariot the pole? Is it the axle? Is it the wheels, the frame, the ropes, or the yoke?" Nagasena calmly replied, "No, your majesty." The king pressed, "Then is it all of those parts combined?" Nagasena again said no. "Then is it something outside of those parts?" "No, your majesty." The king was triumphant. "Then you speak a falsehood. The chariot does not exist." But Nagasena calmly turned the question back on the king. He replied, "Your majesty, it is because of the pole, the axle, the wheels, the frame, and all the other parts that we have the convenient designation, the name, the concept of chariot. In exactly the same way, it is because of the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the mental formations, and consciousness that we have the convenient designation, the name, Nagasena. In the ultimate sense, there is no person to be found. This insight, that our self is a convenient convention rather than an ultimate reality, is the gateway to immense freedom. Most of our human anxiety, fear, and sorrow comes from the exhausting, lifelong project of defending and promoting this illusory self. We crave praise for this self. We fear criticism of this self. We feel envy when another self seems to be doing better. We cling to our possessions, our reputation, our life story, because we believe they constitute this self. When we begin to see, not just intellectually but in our bones, that this self is a fluid process, not a solid entity, what is there left to defend? The sting of criticism is lessened, because who is being criticized? The desperate need for praise diminishes, because who is there to be praised? The illusion of a solid barrier between me and you begins to dissolve. When we see that we are all interconnected processes of arising and passing phenomena, a natural compassion arises. Your suffering is no longer fundamentally separate from my suffering. This insight gives us incredible flexibility. When we are not attached to a rigid identity, I am an angry person, or I am a successful person, we are free to change and grow. We can respond to the situations of life with fresh, wise spontaneity, rather than reacting from a fixed and defensive posture. Anatta is not a denial of our humanity. It is a full-throated affirmation of our true nature as a luminous, interconnected, and ever-changing dance of life. We are not a thing to be protected, but a process to be experienced. We are not a noun to be defined, but a verb to be lived. This realization, combined with the wisdom of impermanence, completely reframes our understanding of how our lives unfold. If there is no permanent self to be rewarded or punished, then how do our actions have meaning? How do the consequences of our choices play out in this selfless stream of becoming? This leads us to look at the law of cause and effect, not as a system of cosmic justice for a soul, but as an impersonal, natural law that governs the unfolding of this very process we call our life. It leads us to a deeper and more powerful understanding of the law of karma. Having journeyed deep into the liberating and perhaps disorienting truths of impermanence and not self, we might be left with a sense of profound questioning. If all things, including ourselves, are a selfless and constantly changing process, then what gives our lives meaning? What ensures that our actions matter? The answer lies in the third great insight of the Pillar of Wisdom, a deep and nuanced understanding of the natural law of karma. The word karma is one that has permeated Western culture, but it is often deeply misunderstood. We tend to think of it as a kind of mystical, cosmic system of reward and punishment, a form of fate or destiny handed down by an unseen judge. We hear it in phrases like, "He had it coming, that was his karma." This idea of karma as a judgmental, external force is not the Buddhist understanding. The teaching of karma is far more subtle, immediate, and ultimately far more empowering. It is simply the universal, impersonal law of cause and effect as it applies to our intentional actions. It is a natural law, as reliable and impersonal as the law of gravity. Gravity doesn't punish you for stepping off a cliff. It simply operates. In the same way, karma is the law that ensures our actions, like all causes, will have corresponding effects. The absolute heart of this teaching, the key that unlocks its true meaning, lies in the power of intention. The Buddha declared, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." The literal meaning of the word karma is simply action or deed. But what gives an action its karmic weight, its power to create a result, is the volition, the will, the intention behind it. This shifts the entire focus of our spiritual life from obsessing over external behaviors to purifying our internal motivations. An action that looks identical on the outside can have a radically different karmic fruit depending on the intention that drives it. If you are walking in a field and accidentally step on an insect, it is a tragic event, but the karmic impact is minimal because there was no intention to harm. However, if you see an insect and, with a mind of anger or cruelty, you intentionally crush it, the physical act may be similar, but the karmic seed planted is heavy and unwholesome. The same is true for positive actions. A person who donates a large sum of money to a hospital with the selfish intention of having their name on a building and gaining public praise creates a very different karmic result than a person who quietly gives a small amount of their karmic result, time to comfort a sick friend, with a pure heart of compassion. This means that our practice of karma is happening right now, in the silent laboratory of our own minds. Every choice, every motivation, every flicker of ill will or generosity is a karmic action, planting a seed that will one day bear fruit. To understand how this process works, the most helpful analogy is that of a farmer planting seeds in a field. Every intentional action we perform with our body, our speech, or our mind is like planting a seed. An act of generosity plants a seed of abundance. An act of anger plants a seed of conflict. A moment of mindfulness plants a seed of wisdom. These seeds are planted in the vast, fertile field of our own stream of consciousness. The results of these actions, known as vipaka, are the fruits that eventually grow from these seeds. Just as a mango seed can only grow into a mango tree and bear mango fruit, a wholesome seed of kindness can only ripen into a wholesome fruit of happiness and peace. And an unwholesome seed of greed can only ripen into an unwholesome fruit of dissatisfaction and suffering. The type of seed determines the type of fruit. However, the fruit does not always appear immediately. Just as a farmer's seed requires the right conditions to sprout and grow: fertile soil, water, sunlight, and timya, karmic seed must wait for the right supporting conditions to ripen. Some seeds, planted in very fertile soil with ideal weather, may ripen very quickly within this very life. We perform a kind act, and we immediately feel the warmth and joy of it. But other seeds may lie dormant for a very long time, waiting for conditions to be right. This explains the apparent injustices we often see in the world. We see a person who seems cruel and dishonest, yet they are wealthy and successful. We see a person who is kind and generous, yet they are afflicted with illness and hardship. From a karmic perspective, we are witnessing the ripening of fruits from seeds planted long ago, perhaps even in a time beyond our memory. The wealthy but cruel person is currently harvesting the fruit of past generosity, while simultaneously planting new and dangerous seeds of cruelty, whose fruit has not yet appeared. The kind but ill person may be experiencing the ripening of old, unwholesome karma, while at the same time planting beautiful new seeds of patience and compassion, whose fruit will surely ripen in the future. This is where the analogy of the farmer becomes so empowering. We are the farmers of our own lives. We cannot control the weather. There will be droughts and floods, representing the external circumstances of the world and the karma of others that we cannot change. We may have inherited a field with poor soil, representing the tendencies and conditions we were born with from our past karma. These things are outside of our immediate control. But in this very moment, and in every moment that follows, we have absolute 100% control over one thing: which seeds we choose to plant right now. This is the source of our ultimate freedom and responsibility. If we look at the harvest of our life and find that we are reaping a crop of anxiety, conflict, and dissatisfaction, the law of karma invites us to stop blaming the weather. It asks us to look honestly at the kinds of seeds we have been habitually sowing. Have we been planting seeds of impatience, of judgment, of resentment, of craving? The harvest is not a punishment. It is simply information. It is the natural result of our own past actions. Therefore, understanding the law of karma is the ultimate antidote to feelings of helplessness and fatalism. Fatalism says, everything is destined, my life is written in stone, and there is nothing I can do. The law of karma says the exact opposite. It says, your past has influenced your present, but your present is creating your future. We are constantly in the process of sculpting our future selves with the chisel of our present intentions. If we wish for a future filled with more peace, we must plant seeds of peace today. If we wish for a future with more love and friendship, we must plant seeds of kindness and generosity today. If we wish for a future with more wisdom, we must plant seeds of mindfulness and inquiry today. We are not the passive victims of our lives, we are the active creators. This puts the power and the responsibility for our happiness squarely in our own hands. With this deep, intuitive grasp of the interconnected truths of reality, its impermanence, its selfless nature, and the inviolable law of cause and effect that governs its unfolding, the pillar of wisdom is now firmly established. This understanding is not just a fascinating philosophy, it is a powerful catalyst. It provides the profound why behind our every effort. It motivates us to move beyond simply avoiding harm and to begin the joyful and proactive work of cultivating the most beautiful and beneficial qualities of the human heart. We now have the knowledge. The next phase of the path is about taking that knowledge and using it to transform our hearts. It is a journey into the boundless, healing power of love, beginning with the foundational practice that serves as the universal antidote to the poison of fear, anger, and separation, the cultivation of unconditional, loving kindness. Having journeyed through the landscape of the mind and come to an understanding of its selfless, impermanent nature and the great law of cause and effect that governs it, we are now prepared to embark on a new kind of practice. This is a practice not of intellectual insight, but of heartfelt cultivation. The wisdom of Panna provides the clear understanding of why we should cultivate wholesome states. Now, we learn how. We begin with the most powerful medicine for the human heart, the direct and universally effective antidote to the poisons of anger, hatred, resentment, fear, and alienation. This is the practice of developing boundless loving kindness, or metta. Metta is a Pali word that is often translated as love, but it is a love of a very particular kind. It is not the conditional, grasping, romantic love of songs and poems. It is not a love that says, "I will love you if you meet my needs." It is an unconditional, radiant, and boundless wishing for the happiness and well-being of all beings, without exception. It is not a passive feeling, but an active, trainable skill. It is the practice of intentionally softening the heart and breaking down the inner walls of separation we have built between ourselves and others. In a world so often marked by conflict and division, the cultivation of metta is not a sentimental luxury. It is a radical act of peace, making that begins within the sanctuary of our own hearts. The journey of metta begins in the place that, for many of us, is the most difficult and challenging territory of all, with ourselves. The Buddha was adamant on this point. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer genuine, unconditional friendliness to others if your own heart is a battlefield of self-criticism, guilt, and feelings of unworthiness. We are often taught that focusing on ourselves is selfish, but in this practice, it is the most selfless act imaginable. A person whose heart is filled with self-acceptance and inner kindness has no need to be defensive, arrogant, or aggressive. They do not need to pull others down to feel secure. Their kindness naturally and effortlessly overflows to everyone they meet. Therefore, the first and most essential step is to learn to be a good friend to ourselves. To begin this practice, we find a comfortable posture, allowing the body to be relaxed and at ease. We can gently close our eyes and bring our awareness inward, feeling the simple rhythm of our own breath. Then, we make an intentional effort to connect with a feeling of warmth and tenderness for ourselves. This can be difficult, so we can use a skillful means. You might bring to mind an image of yourself as a very small, innocent child, a child deserving of love, safety, and unconditional protection. You can see this child in your mind's eye and feel a natural sense of tenderness toward them. Or you might recall a time when someone, a grandparent, a teacher, a friend, even a beloved pet showed you pure, uncomplicated affection. Try to feel the warmth of that memory in your own body. Resting in this feeling of gentle friendliness, we then begin to silently repeat a series of phrases directed toward our own being. The traditional phrases are a beautiful expression of our deepest human wishes. We begin with, "May I be safe." This is a wish for safety from all inner and outer harm. Safety from accidents and violence, but also safety from the tyranny of our own fearful thoughts, our own anxieties, our own inner critic. We silently offer this wish to ourselves, letting the intention permeate our heart. May I be safe. Then, we offer the phrase, "May I be healthy." This is a wish for the health of the body, for it to be strong and free from illness. But it is also a wish for the health of the mind, for it to be free from the fevers of anger and the chill of despair. We gently repeat the phrase, bathing ourselves in this wholesome intention. May I be healthy. Next, we cultivate the wish. May I be happy. This is not a wish for fleeting, hedonistic pleasure, but for a deep, authentic, and lasting happiness. The happiness that comes from a heart at peace. It is the genuine wish for our own deep fulfillment. May I be happy. And finally, we offer the phrase, "May I live with ease." This is a wish to be free from the heavy burdens of stress, struggle, worry, and striving. It is a wish for a life of balance, grace, and simplicity. May I live with ease. As we repeat these phrases, it is very likely that we will encounter resistance. The inner critic may arise with a torrent of objections. You don't deserve this. You are not good enough. This is selfish. Look at all your flaws. This is a critical moment in the practice. The instruction is not to fight with this voice, not to argue with it, and not to believe it. The instruction is to meet this critical part of ourselves with metta as well. We acknowledge the voice of the inner critic. We see its own pain and fear, and we wrap it in the same blanket of loving kindness. The metta is for our whole being, including the parts that feel broken, unworthy, or critical. We simply notice the resistance, and then gently, patiently, return to repeating the phrases. We are not trying to force a feeling. We are simply setting a clear intention. The repeated setting of this intention is what slowly, gently, begins to transform our inner landscape. Having established a foundation of kindness for ourselves, we then begin to expand the circle of metta outwards. The next stage is to bring to mind a respected or beloved person. This could be a teacher, a mentor, a spiritual guide, a dear friend, a family member, or anyone for whom we feel a natural sense of appreciation and warmth. This stage is usually quite easy and pleasant, as the love flows effortlessly. We bring an image of this person to our mind, seeing them happy and well. Then, we direct the very same phrases toward them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We sincerely wish for their deepest well-being, letting our heart radiate this friendliness toward them. After resting here for a while, feeling the natural joy of this connection, we stretch the muscle of the heart further. We bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone we might see regularly, but for whom we have no strong feelings, positive or negative. It could be the person who serves us coffee in the morning, a cashier at the grocery store, a person we see on our daily commute. We know nothing of their life, their dreams, their struggles. They exist for us as a mere function. The practice here is to see their full humanity. We recognize that just like us, this person wishes to be happy and free from suffering. And so, we extend the exact same heartfelt wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This practice is incredibly powerful. It begins to dissolve the walls of indifference that we build around ourselves, transforming our world from a collection of strangers into a community of fellow beings, each worthy of our care. Now, we approach the great challenge of the practice, the step that requires the most courage and offers the most profound liberation. We bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the person who is the source of our deepest trauma. We bring their image to mind, and we acknowledge the feelings that arise: the anger, the hurt, the resentment. We do not deny these feelings. Then, we must remember the purpose of this practice. The goal is not to condone their harmful actions, nor is it to force ourselves to feel a false sense of affection for them. The goal is to free ourselves. We come to see that the anger and resentment we hold in our own heart is a burning coal that we are clutching, hoping it will harm the other person. But it is only burning our own hand. For our own sake, as an act of profound self-liberation, we make the effort to let it go. We reflect, just as I wish to be happy, this person, in their own confused way, also wishes to be happy. Their harmful actions come from their own suffering and delusion. And then, as best we can, we extend the phrases of metta. May you be free from the anger that causes you to harm others. May you find the peace that I seek for myself. May you be well. This can be incredibly difficult. If a wave of anger arises, we let go of the image of the difficult person and return the metta to ourselves. May I be free from this anger. May I be at peace. We may need to go back and forth many times between ourselves and them until the heart begins, ever so slightly, to soften. This is the alchemy of the heart, transforming the lead of resentment into the gold of a free and spacious mind. Having worked through these specific categories, we are now ready to let the heart become boundless. We begin to radiate the feeling of metta in all directions: in front of us, behind us, to our left, to our right, above us and below us. We extend it to all beings in our building, then our city, then our country. We extend it to all beings on our continent, and then to all beings on this entire planet Earth. We extend our well-wishing to our friends, to our neutral people, and to our enemies. We extend it to all human beings, and to all animals, all insects, all creatures, in the oceans and in the sky, all beings seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. With a vast and open heart, we repeat the phrases for all. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be healthy. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere live with ease. This practice dissolves the final barriers of separation, cultivating a sense of deep kinship with all of life. We must never mistake this practice for a weak or sentimental exercise. Metta is a force. It is a source of immense strength and courage. There is a famous story in the life of the Buddha that illustrates this power. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to assassinate him. As one of his plots, he got the keepers of the royal elephants to intoxicate the fiercest elephant in the stables, a fearsome creature named Nalagiri, and unleash him on the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As the maddened elephant charged, trumpeting with rage, the Buddha's disciples panicked and fled. But the Buddha stood his ground, calm and serene. He did not prepare to fight or to run. He simply turned his full awareness toward the raging animal and radiated a powerful, unwavering, and concentrated field of pure metta. The ancient texts say that as the elephant entered this palpable field of loving kindness, its murderous rage began to subside. Its charge slowed to a walk. Its eyes, which had been red with fury, grew soft. It came before the Buddha, knelt down, and was completely tamed. This story teaches us that loving kindness is the ultimate shield. It has the power to tame the raging elephants of fear, hatred, and violence, both in the world around us and, more importantly, within our own hearts. The systematic practice of metta, then, is a journey of liberation for the heart. It frees us from the prisons of anger, jealousy, fear, and self-criticism. It softens our being and allows us to meet the world with greater warmth and less fear. But this very openness leads us to a new and vital perception. With our hearts now open, we cannot help but notice that while we wish for all beings to be happy, many are not. We see the undeniable reality of suffering in the world around us. What happens when our heart, now tender and filled with metta, encounters this pain? The wish for another's happiness, when it touches their suffering, undergoes a noble transformation. It evolves into its sacred cousin, the trembling of the heart that actively wishes for that suffering to end. This is the birth of boundless compassion, or karuna. Having opened our hearts to the boundless, unconditional friendliness of loving kindness, or metta, we have softened the soil of our own being. The defensive walls we built around ourselves have begun to crumble, and we are able to meet the world with a newfound warmth and intimacy. But this very openness, this tender connection to life, inevitably leads us to a new and profound perception. In wishing for all beings to be happy, we cannot help but notice the stark reality that many are not. We see the suffering in the lives of our loved ones, in our communities, and in the world at large. We see the pain of sickness, of loss, of fear, and of injustice. What happens when our heart, now gentle and receptive, makes contact with this undeniable truth of dukkha? The wish for another's happiness, when it is faced with their suffering, undergoes a sacred and powerful transformation. It evolves from a gentle warmth into an active, trembling empathy. This is the birth of compassion, or karuna. Karuna is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, coupled with the sincere aspiration that this suffering may come to an end. It is not a sad or depressing state. It is a state of immense courage. It is the heart's capacity to stay present with pain, to not turn away, to not shut down. It is the courageous yes of the heart to the full spectrum of reality, not just the pleasant parts. It is essential, from the very beginning, to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity looks down from above. It creates a sense of separation. It says, "Oh, you poor, unfortunate thing. I am so glad I am not in your position." Pity reinforces the ego, making us feel superior to the one who is suffering. It is a subtle form of aversion, a way of pushing their experience away from us. Compassion, on the other hand, is a feeling between equals. It is based on the recognition of our shared humanity. It says, "I see your pain, and it touches my heart, because I know what it is to suffer. Your struggle is not foreign to me. I am with you in this." Pity creates distance. Compassion closes it. Pity is a feeling of separateness. Compassion is an experience of connection. The practice of cultivating compassion, therefore, is an extension of our metta practice. We bring to mind a being who we know is suffering. It could be a friend struggling with an illness, a family member experiencing a loss, or even an animal we have seen in distress. We allow ourselves to gently connect with the reality of their pain, letting our heart be touched by it. Then, with sincerity and focus, we extend the heartfelt wish. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain. May your heart find peace. May you be healed. We are not trying to magically take their suffering away. We are generating a powerful, positive mental state, an intention that is a force for healing, both in ourselves and, in subtle ways, in the world. For our compassion for others to be a truly sustainable and powerful force, it must be built upon an unshakable foundation of compassion for ourselves. This is perhaps one of the most vital and healing practices on the entire path. For most of us, when we ourselves fail, when we make a mistake, or when we are in pain, our first reaction is not one of kindness. It is one of harsh self-judgment, of relentless criticism. We become our own worst enemy. If a dear friend came to us after making a terrible mistake, we would likely not shout at them and call them a failure. We would offer them a comforting presence, kind words, and our understanding. Self-compassion is the simple but radical act of offering this same quality of friendship to ourselves. It is the practice of meeting our own suffering with the same tenderness we would offer to another. We can understand self-compassion as having three key components. The first is self-kindness. This is the active choice to be gentle and understanding with ourselves, rather than harshly critical. It is treating our own failures as opportunities for learning, not as evidence of our inadequacy. The second component is a sense of common humanity. This is the recognition that suffering and imperfection are not a personal failing. They are an unavoidable part of the shared human experience. When we suffer, we often feel isolated, as if we are the only one in the world who feels this way. Self-compassion reminds us that to be human is to be vulnerable and flawed. This connects us to others rather than separating us. The third component is mindfulness. It is the ability to hold our painful thoughts and feelings in balanced awareness. We neither suppress them, nor do we get swept away by them. We observe them with clarity and spaciousness, recognizing that they are temporary experiences, not our entire identity. When you make a mistake, instead of the habitual inner voice that says, "You are so stupid," the voice of self-compassion arises and says, "That was a painful moment. It's okay to feel disappointed. Everyone makes mistakes. Let's be kind to ourselves right now." This inner shift is the bedrock of all genuine compassion for others. However, an open and compassionate heart, without the guidance of wisdom, runs the risk of becoming overwhelmed. We can be so moved by the suffering in the world that we burn out, a state often called compassion fatigue. Or we can engage in what is sometimes called idiot compassion, where our attempts to help, lacking wisdom, inadvertently cause more harm. True karuna, therefore, must always be balanced by panna, or wisdom. Wisdom understands that we cannot carry the suffering of the entire world on our own shoulders. It recognizes the limits of our capacity and the importance of self-care. It knows that to be an effective helper for others, we must first protect our own well-being. A person who drowns while trying to save someone is of no use to anyone. We must learn to stand on the firm ground of our own stability, and then extend a helping hand. Wisdom also allows us to discern when our help is truly skillful. Sometimes, allowing people to face the natural consequences of their own actions is a more compassionate act than constantly rescuing them. Compassion without wisdom can be messy and exhausting. But when compassion is guided by the clear-seeing eye of wisdom, it becomes a powerful, intelligent, and sustainable force for good in the world. This ideal of wise, active, and boundless compassion is beautifully embodied in the great figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, a revered figure in Mahayana Buddhism. Avalokiteshvara is often depicted with 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands, and in the palm of each hand is an eye. The 1,000 arms represent the limitless capacity to reach out and offer help to the countless suffering beings throughout all realms of existence. It is compassion in action. But the eye in the palm of each hand represents the crucial element of wisdom. This is a compassion that sees clearly, It understands the true nature of suffering and its causes. It knows where help is truly needed and how it can be most skillfully offered. This is not just a mythological figure to be worshipped. Avalokiteshvara is an archetype of our own deepest potential. The seed of this wise and active compassion exists within every one of us, waiting to be cultivated. It is the engine of all truly selfless and altruistic action. The practice of karuna, then, is the courageous training of the heart to remain open in the face of pain. It is the antidote to the paralyzing states of despair, indifference, and fear. It transforms us from passive spectators of the world's suffering into active participants in its healing. It is the recognition that our own liberation is inextricably linked to the well-being of all. But this practice leads to one final, profound question. With a heart so open that it trembles at all suffering, how do we find balance? How do we face the vast impersonal tragedies of the world, or the inevitable sickness and death of those we love, without being completely overwhelmed by sorrow? Our compassionate heart, to be truly unshakable, needs one final sublime quality as its protector and its ground. It needs the profound and steadying calm of equanimity. Having cultivated a heart that radiates unconditional loving kindness and trembles with boundless compassion, we arrive at the fourth and final of the sublime states, the great protector and stabilizer of the heart, known as equanimity or rupekkha. If loving kindness is the sun that warms all beings without distinction, and compassion is the rain that falls on all lands to soothe their suffering, then equanimity is the vast, stable earth itself, which receives both sun and rain with a quiet, unshakable balance. It is the crowning glory of the emotional heart, the quality that ensures our love and compassion are not sources of burnout and distress, but are boundless, sustainable, and wise. We must, however, approach this concept with great care, for equanimity is often confused with its cold and distant cousin, indifference. Indifference is a state of shutting down, of apathy, of not caring. It is a defense mechanism born of fear. It says, "This is too painful. I will not feel it." Equanimity, on the other hand, is a state of profound openness and immense care. It does not shut down. It opens up so wide that it can hold the entirety of life's experience in a loving, spacious embrace. It is born not of fear, but of deep wisdom. It is the union of a tender heart and a steady mind. The primary training ground for equanimity is our daily encounter with what are known as the 8 worldly winds. These are the unavoidable, fluctuating pairs of opposites that blow through every human life, constantly threatening to throw us off balance. The first pair is praise and blame. The untrained mind is addicted to praise. When someone compliments us, our ego inflates, and we feel a rush of pleasure. We then cling to that feeling and crave more of it. When someone criticizes or blames us, we recoil in pain. Our ego feels wounded, and we react with anger, defensiveness, or shame. The equanimous mind hears both praise and blame with a steady calm. It can appreciate kind words without becoming arrogant, and it can receive criticism without being shattered. It recognizes that both praise and blame are fleeting opinions, words carried on the wind, not a true measure of our intrinsic worth. The second pair is success and failure, or gain and loss. Our lives are a constant series of gains and losses, from the small to the profound. We gain a new job, we lose a valued possession, we succeed in a project, we fail in another. The unbalanced mind is tossed about on these waves, elated and triumphant in moments of success, and devastated and despairing in moments of failure. Equanimity does not mean we stop trying to succeed. It means we do our best. We act with skill and integrity, but we hold the results lightly. We understand that success and failure are complex outcomes, dependent on countless causes and conditions beyond our control. We can celebrate our gains without clinging to them, and we can meet our losses with grace and resilience, knowing that they too are impermanent. The third pair is pleasure and pain. This refers to the physical and emotional pleasures and pains that are an inescapable part of having a human body and mind. The mind ruled by craving and aversion is on a constant, frantic mission to maximize pleasure and eliminate all pain. This futile project is the very definition of a stressful life. The equanimous mind, however, understands that pleasure and pain are natural textures of existence. It can experience pleasure without desperately trying to make it last forever, and it can meet pain with a spacious, non-reactive awareness, which dramatically reduces the suffering associated with it. It does not add the second arrow of mental resistance to the first arrow of physical or emotional pain. Finally, the fourth pair is fame and obscurity. It is the desire to be known, to be seen, to be important, and the fear of being a nobody, of being overlooked and forgotten. This drives so much of our social ambition and anxiety. Equanimity is the deep inner peace that is not dependent on public recognition. It finds its contentment in the quality of its own actions and the purity of its own heart. Whether one person knows of it or a million people know, the equanimous mind can function happily in the spotlight or in complete anonymity. Its stability comes from within, not from the fickle validation of the world. This profound balance of heart is not a feat of emotional suppression. It is a quality that arises from deep wisdom, particularly the clear seeing of two fundamental truths. The first is the truth of our own limitations. Equanimity is rooted in the humble acceptance that we cannot control everything. We can act with the best intentions. We can speak with the kindest words. We can offer all the help we are capable of, but the final outcome of any situation is not entirely in our hands. The practice is to do our best, to act from a place of love and compassion, and then to let go of the result. We plant the wholesome seed to the best of our ability, and then we surrender the harvest to the larger laws of life. This act of letting go is the antidote to the anxiety, frustration, and godlike sense of responsibility that can so easily exhaust us. The second, and perhaps most profound, wisdom that gives rise to equanimity is the deep understanding of the law of karma, the truth that every sentient being is the owner and heir of their own intentional actions. We can love someone with all our heart, but we cannot live their life for them. We can offer advice, support, and a shining example, but we cannot make their choices for them. They will, inevitably, experience the results of the karmic seeds they themselves have sown. Understanding this does not make us stop caring. In fact, it allows us to care in a wiser, more sustainable way. It frees our compassion from the codependent, anxious need to fix everyone. It replaces this with a deep and respectful trust in each person's own journey, even if that journey involves painful lessons. This is the quality that allows a parent to love their adult child and let them make their own mistakes. It is the quality that allows a doctor to care deeply for a patient with a terminal illness, offering comfort and presence without being shattered by an outcome they cannot change. It is the great protector of the compassionate heart, preventing it from being consumed by a sorrow it cannot control. We can visualize equanimity through two powerful natural images. The first is that of a great, towering mountain. The winds howl around it, storms rage, Rains lash its slopes, the sun beats down upon it. But through it all, the mountain remains utterly still, stable, and majestic. The mountain is not immune to the weather. It feels it all, but it is not disturbed or thrown off balance by it. It has a deep, unshakable stability that is greater than any passing storm. An equanimous mind is like this mountain, remaining steady and peaceful amidst the 8 worldly winds. The second image is that of the deep ocean. On the surface, the ocean can be a place of tremendous turmoil. Great waves crash. The wind whips the water into a frenzy, and storms create chaos. But if you were to sink deep down, hundreds or thousands of feet below the surface, you would find a place of absolute silence, stillness, and calm, completely untouched by the turbulence far above. Equanimity is this deep, silent stillness of the mind, a place of peace we can learn to inhabit, even when the surface of our life is chaotic. Equanimity is the sublime quality that holds loving kindness and compassion in perfect balance. It ensures our love does not become attachment, and our compassion does not become despair. It is the spacious, wise, and peaceful heart that can look upon the world's beauty and its sorrow with the same steady, unwavering, and unconditional love. With the cultivation of these 4 sublime states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and now equanimity, the training of the heart reaches its apex. We have now developed a complete toolkit for living a wise, balanced, and deeply caring life. To bring this practice to its fullest fruition, to truly appreciate the preciousness of this path and this life, we are encouraged to make one final, powerful contemplation. We must turn our clear and steady minds to face the most profound certainty of our existence, not with fear, but with a clear-sighted wisdom that makes every moment shine with meaning. This is the practice of contemplating the reality of death. Having cultivated the boundless heart of loving kindness, the courageous heart of compassion, and the unshakable heart of equanimity, we have assembled a complete toolkit for meeting life with grace and wisdom. We have learned how to relate to ourselves and others from a place of profound care. And now, the path invites us to undertake one final, great contemplation. This is a practice so powerful that the Buddha called it the supreme mindfulness, a reflection so potent that it has the capacity to instantly reorient our entire existence, to incinerate our trivial concerns, and to awaken in us a fierce and joyful appreciation for the preciousness of this life. This is the practice of Maranasati, the mindfulness of death. In our modern culture, this is the ultimate taboo. We treat death not as a natural and inevitable part of life, but as a medical failure, a grim secret to be hidden away, a topic to be avoided at all costs. We live in a state of profound denial, acting as though we have an infinite amount of time, as though we are the one special exception to the universal law that all who are born must one day die. This denial does not protect us from death, but it robs us of life. It allows us to live in a state of slumber, wasting our precious moments on things that do not matter. The practice of Maranasati is the great awakening from this slumber. It is not a morbid obsession with dying. It is a life-affirming practice about living fully, wisely, and without regret. The contemplation begins with facing 2 simple, undeniable facts. The first is that death is absolutely certain. This is not a belief or a philosophy. It is an observable reality. Every great empire has fallen. Every towering monument eventually turns to dust. Every hero we have ever read about, every ancestor we have ever had, every plant, every animal, every star in the sky is subject to this law of cessation. Look around you. Everyone you know and love will one day die, and you will die. There is no escape, No appeal, no negotiation. To sit with this truth, to let it land not just in the intellect but in the heart, is a profoundly sobering and clarifying practice. It cuts through our ego's cherished sense of specialness. We are a part of nature, and like all of nature, we are subject to its cycles. This is not a cause for despair. It is the foundational truth upon which a sane and realistic life can be built. The second great fact is that while death itself is certain, its timing is utterly uncertain. This is the truth that ignites our practice with a sense of urgency. We live with the casual, unexamined assumption that we will have a long life, that death is something far off in the distant future. We think, I will get to my spiritual practice later. I will heal that broken relationship later. I will live my real life later, after I have achieved this goal or that one. Maranasati systematically dismantles this lazy and dangerous assumption. We could live for another 50 years, or we could die in the next 50 days, or the next 50 minutes. There is no guarantee. The body is fragile, a complex and delicate machine with millions of parts that could fail at any moment. The world is unpredictable. To truly take this uncertainty into our hearts is to realize that we do not have time to waste. Every moment is infinitely precious because we do not know how many more we have. The Tibetan tradition offers a powerful 9-point death meditation to drive this point home. It involves reflecting that everyone has to die, that our lifespan is constantly shrinking, and that we have very little time for practice. It asks us to consider that our life expectancy is not fixed, that there are countless causes of death, and that our body is profoundly vulnerable. And finally, it asks us to recognize that at the time of our death, our wealth cannot help us, our loved ones cannot come with us, and even our own cherished body must be left behind. The only thing that will be of true benefit is the quality of our own mind, the wholesome states we have cultivated. This reflection is not meant to create fear, but to create what is known as samvega, a sense of wise urgency that motivates us to live with purpose and to practice with diligence, starting right now. When we hold this dual reality in our minds, the certainty of death and the uncertainty of its timing, it acts as a great clarifier. It becomes a powerful filter through which we can assess our own lives. It forces us to ask the most important question of all: what truly matters? Engage in this contemplation for a moment. If you knew with absolute certainty that you had only 1 year left to live, what would you immediately stop doing? The petty grudges you hold against family members, the resentment over past slights, the anxieties about your social status, the obsessive pursuit of more money or more possession show. Important would these things seem, they would be revealed for what they are: trivial distractions, a tragic waste of your precious, remaining energy. The fear of what others think of you would evaporate. The habit of mindless scrolling through a phone would seem absurd. The small annoyances and daily frustrations would lose all of a sudden their power to disturb your peace. And then, ask the second, more important question: what would you start doing? What would you do with your final, precious year? Almost universally, the answers move toward what is most essential and life-affirming. You would spend meaningful time with the people you love. You would make that phone call to heal a broken relationship. You would forgive those you need to forgive, and you would ask for forgiveness from those you have harmed. You would express your love and gratitude freely and often. You would spend more time in nature, appreciating its simple beauty. You would seek to find a sense of inner peace, to resolve your inner conflicts. You would live with more authenticity, courage, and joy. The practice of Maranasati is the profound realization that you do not need to wait for a terminal diagnosis to live this way. You can choose to live with this clarity, with this sense of purpose, with this love, starting right now. Contemplating death becomes the key to unlocking your most authentic life. This awareness of our own finitude does not make life grim or grey. Paradoxically, it makes it infinitely more vibrant and beautiful. It is precisely because life is temporary that it is so precious. If we had an infinite number of days, we would take each one for granted. But when we know our days are numbered, each one becomes a priceless gift. Every sunrise becomes a miracle. Every conversation with a loved one becomes an opportunity for deep connection. Every taste of food, every breath of fresh air becomes a cause for wonder and gratitude. We stop sleepwalking through our lives, waiting for some future moment of happiness to arrive. We awaken to the beauty and the miracle of the life that is right here, in this very moment. In some Buddhist traditions, monks would contemplate the natural decay of a corpse, not out of a morbid fascination, but as a direct way of seeing the impermanence of their own physical form. We can do this in a gentler way. We can look at a beautiful flower in full bloom and appreciate its vibrant life, while also knowing that in a few days, it will wilt, its petals will fall, and it will return to the earth. Seeing this cycle is not sad, it is seeing the truth. And in seeing the truth of our own body's nature as a temporary, beautiful flower, we are freed from our obsessive attachment to it. We learn to identify not with the temporary form, but with the timeless awareness that is experiencing it, with the boundless heart that has learned to love it. Therefore, the regular, mindful contemplation of death is not a dark and depressing practice. It is a practice of courage, of wisdom, and of love. It is the great organizer of our lives, putting our priorities in order. It is the ultimate motivator, inspiring us to practice with sincerity and to live with purpose. It is the great simplifier, stripping away all that is non-essential and leaving only what is true and meaningful. It is the dark, fertile soil in which the most beautiful flower of a life well lived can grow. It does not teach us how to die. It teaches us how to live. Having taken this profound journey from honestly facing our suffering, to understanding its deep causes, to walking the path of ethical living, mental discipline, and heartfelt cultivation, and now to facing the truth of our own mortality, we are left with one final task. The journey is not over when the insights are gained. The journey is fulfilled when those insights are seamlessly, gracefully, and joyfully woven into the very fabric of our ordinary, everyday lives. The final challenge is the challenge of integration. We have now traveled an immense distance on this inner journey. We have stood at the summit of profound philosophical insight, looking down upon the selfless and impermanent nature of reality. We have walked through the fertile valleys of the heart, cultivating the boundless states of love, compassion, and equanimity. We have even stared into the abyss of our own mortality and found not fear, but a profound appreciation for the preciousness of life. And now, we must make the most important journey of all, the journey back down from the mountaintop and into the bustling marketplace of our daily lives. For the wisdom of this path is not meant to be a beautiful souvenir, kept on a high shelf and admired from a distance. It is meant to be a set of practical, everyday tools, worn and weathered through constant use. The final and culminating practice is that of integration, the art of weaving every thread of this understanding into the living fabric of our moment-to-moment existence. The goal is not to renounce the world, but to engage with it more fully, more sanely, and with a heart wide open. A common misconception is that our spiritual practice is something that happens only during a specific, cordoned off time the 20 minutes we spend on a meditation cushion in the morning. This formal practice is undeniably vital. It is like a musician practicing their scales, or an athlete training in the gym. It is where we build the fundamental strength, focus, and sensitivity of the mind. But this training is not the main event. It is preparation for the real performance, which is the rest of our life. The true measure of our practice is not how peaceful we feel in the silence of our room, but how we respond when cut off in traffic, how we communicate during a difficult conversation with our partner, how we act when faced with a stressful deadline at work. The integrated path teaches us that the meditation cushion is everywhere. That traffic jam is your cushion for practicing patience. That heated disagreement is your cushion for practicing right speech and compassion. The tedious task of washing the dishes is your cushion for practicing mindfulness. When you are washing a dish, you can be lost in 1,000 thoughts about the past and future, which creates stress. Or you can choose to make it a practice. You can bring your full attention to the physical sensations, the warmth of the water on your hands, the slippery texture of the soap, the sound of the plate being rinsed clean. In that moment of pure presence, the chore is transformed into a meditation. The entire world becomes our monastery, and every experience becomes our teacher. Of course, the reality of our 21st century lives is one of immense busyness and constant distraction. We often feel we have no time for practice. The beauty of the integrated path is that it does not always require more time. It requires a different quality of attention within the time we already have. We can weave what might be called micro-practices into the fabric of our day. One of the most powerful is the 3-breath pause. Before you open your laptop in the morning, before you answer a ringing phone, before you walk into a difficult meeting, simply pause. Take 3 slow, conscious breaths. Feel the air enter your body and feel it leave. This simple act, which takes no more than 10 seconds, creates a precious gap between stimulus and reaction. It allows you to proceed not from a place of harried autopilot, but from a place of centered presence. You can use transitions as a trigger for mindfulness. Every time you walk through a doorway, for example, let it be a reminder to take one mindful breath and ask yourself, what is my intention right now? This simple habit can recenter you dozens of times a day. You can transform your relationship with food by practicing mindful eating. For just the first 3 bites of your meal, commit to being fully present. Notice the colors and textures of the food. Inhale its aroma. Chew slowly, savoring each taste. This small practice cultivates gratitude and brings a moment of meditative calm into a busy day. These are not small things. These tiny, consistent moments of waking up have a powerful, cumulative effect, gradually repatterning our nervous system for peace rather than stress. Furthermore, the integrated path asks us to radically reframe our relationship with difficulty. Our habitual tendency is to see problems, conflicts, and frustrations as obstacles to our happiness. We think, if only this difficult person would go away, then I could be at peace. The path suggests the opposite. Our difficulties are the curriculum. They are not obstacles to the path. They are the path. Life itself becomes our most skillful teacher, constantly presenting us with the exact lesson we need to learn. When a colleague acts with anger, it is a perfect opportunity to practice compassion and non-defensiveness. When we feel a wave of anxiety about the future, it is a perfect opportunity to practice mindfulness of feelings, watching them arise and pass away. When we are forced to wait in a long line, it is a perfect opportunity to practice patience and equanimity. The grit in the oyster is what creates the pearl. The challenges in our lives are the very grit that polishes our wisdom and strengthens our hearts. On this journey, which can often be challenging, we must remember that we do not have to walk it alone. The Buddha emphasized that Sangha, community of fellow practitioners, one of the three jewels, as important as the teacher and the teachings. Walking this path in isolation is incredibly difficult. A supportive community provides inspiration when we feel discouraged, offers clarity when we feel confused, and reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles. In the modern world, Sangha can take many forms. It might be a local meditation group you sit with once a week. It might be an online community that shares your values. It might simply be a trusted friend with whom you can speak openly and honestly about your inner life. To connect with others on the same path is to find a powerful source of support and good company for the road. Ultimately, the integrated life is like the weaving of a great and beautiful tapestry. Each of the 8 folds of the path is a different colored thread. Right view is the thread that sets the overall pattern. Right intention and right effort are the threads that give it energy and direction. Right speech, action, and livelihood are the strong, foundational threads that give the fabric its integrity. And right mindfulness and concentration are the threads that give it its fine detail and luminous clarity. A life lived with wisdom and compassion is one where all these 8 threads are woven together seamlessly, creating a whole that is strong, coherent, and beautiful. We must also remember that progress on this path is not a straight, linear ascent. It is more like an upward spiral. We may find ourselves revisiting the same old patterns and challenges, our anger, our fear, our attachments again and again. But each time we circle back to them, if we are practicing, we meet them with a little more awareness, a little more kindness, a little more wisdom than the time before. This is the definition of progress. The invitation is to be infinitely patient and profoundly kind with ourselves throughout this lifelong process of becoming. The goal is not to achieve a state of flawless perfection, but to become a more complete, more authentic, and more fully awake human being, bringing the boundless heart of a meditator into the beautiful, messy, and precious gift that is our everyday life. We began this journey together in a place that is intimately familiar to so many of us, standing in the heart of a storm, running on a treadmill that goes nowhere, exhausted by the relentless pressure to become something more. We were drowning in the noise of a world that constantly tells us that our happiness lies just outside of ourselves, in the next achievement, the next acquisition. And now, after this long exploration, we find ourselves in a very different landscape. The storm of the world may not have ceased, but we are no longer lost in it. We have found the eye of the hurricane, the place of profound stillness that has been waiting within us all along. We have stepped off the treadmill. We have traveled the path of the 4 noble truths. We had the courage to diagnose the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of our unease. We unmasked its inner architect, the thirsty, clinging mind. We discovered the luminous and hopeful truth that an end to this struggle is possible, and we were given a clear, practical, and compassionate map to guide us home. The ultimate message of this ancient path is as simple as it is profound. The suffering, the anxiety, the stress that you experience is not a punishment. It is not a sign that you are broken or that life is against you. It is a message. It is a wise and compassionate teacher trying to get your attention. Your anxiety is pointing to the places where you are clinging to an uncertain future. Your resentment is pointing to a past that you have not yet released. Your dissatisfaction is pointing to your habit of seeking lasting fulfillment in things that are, by their very nature, impermanent. If we learn to listen to our suffering with this kind of wise attention, it ceases to be our tormentor and becomes our most trusted guide on the path to freedom. And this freedom, this peace, is not a destination we reach once all of our life's problems are solved. It is not found in a different job, a different partner, or a different city. It is an inner capacity. It is the inherent quality of a mind that has been trained in wisdom and a heart that has been softened by compassion. It is an unshakable peace that can coexist with the inevitable pains and pleasures, the gains and losses of a full human life. You do not need to become someone else to walk this path. You need only to become more fully and authentically yourself. You do not need to undertake a grand, dramatic gesture. The journey of 1,000 miles, as it is said, begins with a single step. On this path, that step is as simple, as immediate, and as accessible as your own breath. The entire journey is contained within it. The choice to pause, to feel the sensation of the air entering your body, to feel it leave, that is the beginning. That is the practice. You have all the tools you need. You possess the capacity for wisdom, the seed of compassion, the potential for unshakable peace. They are your birthright. The path is not about finding something you don't have. It is about clearing away the dust and confusion that obscures the luminous, peaceful nature that has been there all along. The peace you seek is not in some distant time or faraway place. It is right here, in this very moment, waiting patiently for you to come home.